Aurelia Vale's wedding dress feels like a straitjacket. In 60 seconds, she'll marry a man she's met twice, a mafia heir whose eyes hold more threat than promise. Her family's debts bought this moment, but tucked inside her bouquet is something Dante Morelli doesn't know about, a hidden legal clause that could set her free in exactly 1 year. All she has to do is survive until then. The priest clears his throat. Dante's hand closes around hers, cold as a verdict. And somewhere in the cathedral's shadows, the first gunshot shatters the stained glass. If you're hooked, stay until the end. Hit that like button and drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this story reaches across the world. The cathedral smelled like lies and expensive flowers. Aurelia stood at the altar in a dress she hadn't chosen, wearing a smile she didn't feel, listening to words that meant nothing. The priest droned on about love and honor, while 200 guests pretended this wasn't exactly what it was: a transaction. A deal sealed with white lace and champagne instead of signed contracts and wire transfers, though those existed too, locked away in her father's study, alongside the collection notices and final warnings that had led them all here. Dante Morelli stood beside her, perfectly still. He'd spoken maybe 10 words to her since she'd arrived, and half of those had been during their rehearsal yesterday. Stand here. Turn there. Don't forget to smile. Instructions delivered in a voice that suggested he found the whole performance mildly tedious, like sitting through a board meeting about office supplies. She studied him from the corner of her eye. Tall, dark-haired, expensive suit that probably cost more than her college tuition. Handsome in that cold, carved way that made her think of marble statues. Beautiful but fundamentally untouchable. His jaw was set, his expression neutral. He looked like a man signing paperwork, not taking a wife. Which was fine. She didn't want a husband. She just needed to survive being one. The priest asked if anyone objected. The silence stretched out, heavy and absolute. Aurelia's mother sat in the front pew, crying quietly into a handkerchief that matched her pearl pink dress. Her father stared straight ahead, his face gray and drawn. Her younger brother Marco fidgeted in his seat, 15 years old and trying so hard to look grown up in his first real suit. This was for them. She repeated it like a prayer. This is for them. Aurelia Catherine Vale, the priest said, and her stomach dropped. Do you take this man? She stopped listening. The words washed over her while her mind raced through the plan she'd spent 3 weeks perfecting. 1 year. That's all she had to endure. The prenuptial agreement, the one Dante's lawyers had drafted, the one her father had signed without reading carefully enough, contained a clause buried in Section 17, subsection 4. If the marriage ended within the first year due to irreconcilable differences and mutual dissolution, her family's debts would still be considered settled. The Morelli family would take the hit as a business loss, a failed investment. She'd found it 2 days ago, reading the contract at 3 in the morning while her parents slept and Marco played video games downstairs. Her hands had shaken so hard she'd almost dropped the pages. A way out. An escape hatch built right into the trap. All she had to do was make it 12 months, keep her head down, don't make waves, and survive until she could walk away clean. Dante would probably be relieved. This marriage was a business arrangement for him too. A way to broker peace between families, secure territories, legitimize money. He didn't want a real wife any more than she wanted to be one. The priest was waiting. Everyone was waiting. I do, Aurelia said. The words tasted like ash. Dante's turn. He repeated the vows in that same flat professional tone, completely mechanical. His hand was still holding hers, and she could feel the calluses on his palm, rough spots that didn't match the expensive suit. She wondered briefly what he did to earn those, then decided she didn't want to know. You may kiss the bride. Dante turned to her. For just a second, something flickered in his dark eyes. Not warmth exactly, but something less cold. Calculation, maybe. Assessment. Then he leaned down and pressed his lips to hers, brief and businesslike. The kiss lasted maybe 3 seconds. His mouth was warm, and she caught the faint scent of his cologne, something expensive and woody. Then it was over. He pulled back, his expression already shuddering closed again. The guests applauded, the organ music swelled. Dante tucked her hand into the crook of his elbow and led her down the aisle, past rows of people she didn't know, Men in expensive suits with hard eyes and women dripping in jewelry that could have fed her family for years. They smiled, but the smiles didn't reach anywhere near their eyes. Outside, the steps of the cathedral were crowded with more guests. The September sun was too bright, the air too warm for the heavy dress. Someone thrust a bouquet into her hands, different from the one she'd carried down the aisle, bigger and more elaborate. White roses and stephanotis that probably cost more than her monthly rent used to. Used to. Past tense. Because she didn't have an apartment anymore. She'd given it up last week. Everything she owned was packed into 4 suitcases currently sitting in her childhood bedroom, waiting to be moved to wherever Dante kept his wives. The thought made her stomach turn. "Smile," Dante said quietly, his mouth barely moving. "They're watching." She smiled. The cameras flashed. Someone shouted congratulations. A black limousine waited at the curb, flanked by 2 SUVs with tinted windows. Security. Because apparently, getting married required the same level of protection as transporting nuclear weapons. Dante's hand rested on her lower back, guiding her toward the car. His touch was light, impersonal, the way you'd guide a stranger through a doorway. "Don't look so terrified," he murmured as they walked. "It's bad for my reputation." "Maybe you should have married someone who wanted to be here," she shot back before she could stop herself. His lips twitched, almost a smile. Where would be the fun in that? They reached the limousine. Dante opened the door himself, waving off the driver. She climbed in, grateful for the air conditioning and the tinted windows that blocked out the crowd. He slid in beside her, and the door closed with a heavy, final thunk. Silence. The driver pulled away from the curb. Through the windows, she watched the cathedral recede. Her parents stood on the steps, her mother still crying, her father's arm around her shoulders. Marco was on his phone, probably texting his friends. "They'll be fine," Dante said. She turned to look at him. He'd loosened his tie, and he was watching the city roll past with the same neutral expression he'd worn all day. "What?" "Your family," he said. "They'll be taken care of. That was the arrangement." "I know the arrangement," Aurelia said. "I signed the papers." "Did you read them?" "Every word." His eyebrow lifted slightly. "Really?" Section 17, subsection 4 was particularly interesting. The silence that followed was different, charged. Dante turned to look at her fully for the first time since they'd left the cathedral. His dark eyes studied her face, searching for something. "You found the exit clause," he said finally. Her heart stopped. "You knew about it?" "I wrote it." The air left her lungs. "You... what?" Dante leaned back against the leather seat, still watching her. "Did you really think my lawyers would miss something like that? Or that your father would find it on his own? Then why?" "Insurance," he said. "Escape routes go both ways, Aurelia. If this marriage becomes inconvenient, I'd rather dissolve it quietly than deal with the mess of a contested divorce. Cleaner for everyone." She stared at him. "You planned for this to fail." "I planned for contingencies." He pulled out his phone, already scrolling through messages. "I always do." The casualness of it stunned her. He'd built an escape hatch into their marriage before the wedding even happened. This wasn't just a business arrangement to him, it was a business arrangement he expected to terminate. 1 year, she said. "Minimum," Dante corrected, not looking up from his phone. "Could be less if circumstances change, could be more if the arrangement proves mutually beneficial." He glanced at her. "Don't look so offended. This is better than most marriages. At least we're honest about what it is." "A transaction." "Exactly." He went back to his messages. "The reception starts in an hour. We'll make an appearance, stay long enough to satisfy everyone, then you can go home." "Home," she repeated. "Your new home. I had your things moved this morning." He typed something. "You'll have your own wing, privacy. We won't need to see each other except for public appearances." It was everything she'd hoped for. Space, distance, freedom within the cage. So why did it feel so empty? The reception was held at an estate outside the city, one of the Morelli family properties, all manicured gardens and marble fountains, and waiters in white gloves carrying champagne that cost more than her car. Aurelia smiled until her face hurt and shook hands with people whose names she forgot immediately and pretended not to notice the way they looked at her. The new wife. The nobody who'd married into power. Dante played his part perfectly. He kept her champagne glass full and his hand on her waist, and maintained exactly the right amount of attentive distance, close enough to look devoted, far enough to avoid real intimacy. Every interaction was choreographed, every smile calculated. She watched him work the room and realized she'd married a man who treated his own wedding like a networking event. "He's good at this," someone said beside her. Aurelia turned. A woman stood there, maybe 40, elegant in a dark green dress. She had sharp eyes and a sharper smile. "I'm sorry," Aurelia said. "Dante." The woman sipped her champagne. "He's good at making people believe what he wants them to believe. It's a useful skill in this business." "And what business is that?" The woman's smile widened. "Oh, you're going to be interesting." She extended her hand. "Vittoria Castellano. I've known Dante since he was 16. Aurelia shook her hand. Vittoria's grip was firm, confident. "How do you know him?" "I handle certain aspects of the family's operations. Logistics, mostly. Movement of goods, coordination of resources." Vittoria's tone was pleasant, almost chatty, but her eyes stayed sharp. "You could say I keep things running smoothly, like a manager, like a fixer." Vittoria finished her champagne. "Tell me, Aurelia, what do you know about your new family?" "Enough," Aurelia said carefully. "I doubt that." Vittoria set down her glass. "Here's some free advice. The people in this room fall into 3 categories. Family, who will protect you because Dante says so. Business associates, who will tolerate you for the same reason. And threats, who will test you to see if you're a weakness they can exploit." She leaned in slightly. "Figure out which is which, fast." Before Aurelia could respond, Dante appeared at her elbow. "Vittoria," he said coolly, "I didn't realize you were on the guest list." "I wasn't," Vittoria smiled, "but I never miss a chance to celebrate new beginnings. Your wife is lovely, Dante. Very aware." Something passed between them, some unspoken communication that Aurelia couldn't read. "Enjoy the party," Dante said. It wasn't a suggestion. Vittoria's smile never wavered. "Of course." She touched Aurelia's arm lightly. "Welcome to the family, dear. I have a feeling we'll be seeing a lot of each other." She glided away, disappearing into the crowd. "Stay away from her," Dante said quietly. "Why?" "Because I said so." Aurelia turned to look at him. "That's not an answer." "It's the only one you're getting." He checked his watch. "We've been here long enough. Time to go." The drive to his house, her new prison, took 40 minutes. The property sat behind high walls and electronic gates, surveillance cameras tracking their approach. The house itself was modern, all clean lines and floor-to-ceiling windows that probably cost a fortune to heat in winter. "Mrs. Chen will show you to your rooms," Dante said as they pulled up. "If you need anything, ask her. She manages the household." "Where are you going?" "Work." He was already climbing out of the car. "Don't wait up." And just like that, he was gone, disappearing into the house through a side entrance while she stood in the driveway in her wedding dress, holding her bouquet and wondering what the hell she'd gotten herself into. Mrs. Chen turned out to be a small, efficient woman in her 60s who spoke in clipped sentences and showed Aurelia to a suite of rooms on the second floor that were bigger than her old apartment. Bedroom, sitting room, bathroom, with a tub large enough to swim in. Her suitcases sat in the walk-in closet, looking small and shabby against the built-in shelving. "Mr. Morelli has dinner at 8, Mrs. Chen said. Will you be joining him?" "Is he expecting me to?" "He didn't say," which meant no. "I'll eat in my room, thank you." Mrs. Chen nodded and left, closing the door quietly behind her. Aurelia stood in the middle of her new bedroom and felt the full weight of the day crash down on her. Married, trapped, her family's debts paid with her freedom, and the only way out was to survive 12 months in a stranger's house, playing the role of a wife to a man who'd already planned for their marriage to fail. She kicked off her heels and unzipped the wedding dress, letting the heavy fabric pool on the floor. Underneath, she wore simple white underwear, nothing fancy. Nobody was going to see it anyway. The wedding night. Another performance she wouldn't have to give. She should have felt relieved. Instead, she felt exhausted. Dinner arrived on a tray at 7:30. Grilled salmon, roasted vegetables, crusty bread that was still warm. She ate mechanically, tasting nothing. Through the windows, she could see the grounds, the gardens, the high walls that kept the world out and her in. 1 year, 365 days. She could do this. Her phone buzzed, a text from Marco. "How's married life?" She typed back, "Ask me in a year that bad?" Different. "Dad says you're safe now." The words hit harder than they should have. Safe. As if marrying into a crime family was somehow safer than the alternative. But maybe it was. The people her father had owed money to, the loan sharks, the collectors, the men who'd started showing up at their house with thinly veiled threats, they were worse than Dante Morelli. At least Dante was honest about what he wanted. "I'm fine," she typed. "Take care of Mom, always do." She set down her phone and finished eating. After, she took a bath, letting the hot water unknot the tension in her shoulders. The bathroom had heated floors and a sound system and enough towels to outfit a hotel. Luxury she'd never asked for, bought with a signature on a contract. When she finally crawled into bed, a massive thing with sheets that felt like silk and more pillows than any human needed, it was past midnight. The house was quiet. Dante hadn't come home. Or maybe he had, and he was just staying in his own wing, in his own bedroom, as far from her as the architecture allowed. She lay in the dark and counted the hours until sunrise. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange, suspended state. Dante left for work before she woke up and came home after she went to bed. They saw each other at breakfast sometimes, brief and awkward, discussing nothing more substantial than the weather or whether she needed anything. He was unfailingly polite, completely distant, a stranger who happened to share an address. Mrs. Chen ran the house with quiet efficiency. The staff, a rotating cast of housekeepers and gardeners and security personnel, treated Aurelia with careful respect, always at arm's length. She spent her days reading, exploring the property, trying to figure out what to do with herself now that her entire life had been reduced to waiting. Her family called regularly, her mother tearfully grateful, her father gruffly relieved. Marco, who asked weird questions about what it was like living in a mob house until she told him to stop watching so many movies. On day 16, everything changed. She was in the library, a 2-story room with more books than she could read in a lifetime, when she heard voices in the hallway. Dante's, low and controlled, and another man's, unfamiliar, speaking rapid Italian. "Don't have a choice," the stranger was saying. "They're moving territory again, and if we don't respond—" "Lower your voice," Dante cut him off. "She's your wife. She should know—" "She doesn't need to know anything except how to smile at parties." Aurelia set down her book. She should probably leave, give them privacy. Instead, she moved closer to the door. "That's your play?" the stranger said. "Keep her in the dark and hope nothing explodes?" "My play is keeping her safe by keeping her separate. This doesn't concern her." "It will if Castellano makes good on his threat." Vittoria's bluffing. "You willing to bet your wife's life on that?" Silence. Then Dante's voice, colder than she'd ever heard it. "Get out!" Footsteps. The sound of a door slamming. Aurelia stood frozen in the library, her heart pounding. Castellano. Vittoria Castellano. The woman from the wedding who'd told her to figure out who was a threat. Apparently the answer was Vittoria herself. She waited until she heard Dante's footsteps fade before slipping out of the library and heading upstairs. Her hands were shaking. Keep her safe by keeping her separate, as if ignorance was protection. That night, she started paying attention. She listened to phone calls through cracked doors. She memorized the faces of the men who came to meet with Dante in his study. She learned the names of the drivers, the guards, the people who moved through the house like ghosts. And slowly, piece by piece, she started to build a picture of the world she'd married into. The Morelli family controlled shipping routes through the port. Legitimate businesses, mostly, with just enough illegitimate activity to keep things profitable. Dante had inherited the operation from his father 2 years ago and had been working to consolidate power ever since. But there were rivals, other families who wanted territory, who saw Dante's youth as weakness, who were testing boundaries and waiting for him to slip. And there was Vittoria Castellano, Dante's logistics coordinator, his father's old friend, the woman who supposedly kept everything running smoothly, the woman Dante had told her to stay away from. 3 weeks into the marriage, Aurelia found the first discrepancy. She'd been organizing her things, still living out of suitcases because unpacking felt too permanent, when she'd knocked over a stack of mail that had been forwarded from her old apartment. Most of it was junk, but one envelope caught her eye. A bank statement for an account she'd closed 6 months ago. Except according to the statement, the account was still active, and there'd been a deposit, $5,000, 2 weeks after the wedding. She stared at the numbers, her mind racing. She'd closed this account. She remembered doing it, remembered transferring the last $73 to her new account before submitting the closure paperwork. Someone had reopened it, and someone had deposited money into it. She grabbed her laptop and logged into the bank's website using the old password. The account was there, active, with a balance of $5,000. The deposit showed an account number she didn't recognize and a memo line that read, "Consultation Services." Aurelia sat back, her stomach churning. Consultation services. What the hell did that mean? She dug through her forwarded mail until she found another envelope from the bank. This one dated 3 days ago. Another statement. Another deposit. This time for $7,000. Same account number, same memo. Consultation services. Someone was paying her. Or someone was making it look like someone was paying her. Her hands were shaking again. She closed the laptop and tried to think. This wasn't random. You didn't accidentally reopen a closed bank account. You didn't accidentally deposit money into the wrong account twice. Someone had done this deliberately, but why? The answer, when it came, made her blood run cold. To make it look like she was working for someone, taking payments, consulting for... She thought of Victoria's sharp smile. Figure out which is which, fast. And she thought of the conversation she'd overheard. Keep her safe by keeping her separate. Unless Dante couldn't keep her separate. Unless someone was trying to pull her into the middle of this whether she wanted to be there or not. She needed to tell Dante. She found him in his study at 11 that night, sitting behind a massive desk covered in paperwork and looking like he hadn't slept in days. He glanced up when she knocked, his expression flickering from surprise to something guarded. "It's late," he said. "I need to show you something." She crossed the room and set the bank statements on his desk. "Someone reopened my old account. They've deposited $12,000 in the last 3 weeks. I don't know who, and I don't know why, but I thought you should know." Dante picked up the statements, his eyes scanning the pages. His jaw tightened. "These came to the house?" he asked. "Forwarded from my old apartment." He was quiet for a long moment, staring at the papers. Then he looked up at her and his expression was unreadable. "Did you take the money?" The question felt like a slap. "No." "Are you sure?" "I didn't even know the account was open until today." She fought to keep her voice steady. "Someone's setting me up. I don't know who or why, but I need you to believe me. I didn't take any money." Another silence. Then Dante stood, coming around the desk. He was close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "If you're lying," he said quietly, "it won't end well for you." "I'm not lying." He studied her face, searching for something. Whatever he found must have satisfied him, because he stepped back and pulled out his phone. "I'll have it traced," he said, already typing. "See where the money came from." "And then what?" "Then we find out who's trying to make you look like a traitor." He glanced at her. "Go to bed, Aurelia. I'll handle this." "This affects me too." "Which is why I'm telling you to let me handle it." His tone left no room for argument. "Trust me or don't, but stay out of it either way." She wanted to argue, wanted to demand answers, explanations, some kind of control over what was happening to her life. But the look on his face stopped her. Not anger exactly, something colder, more calculating. He was already 3 steps ahead, already planning his next move. And she was just a piece on the board. She left without another word, climbing the stairs to her room and closing the door behind her. Through the windows, the gardens were dark, the high walls invisible in the night. Somewhere out there, someone was playing a game she didn't understand, using her name, her accounts, her identity for purposes she couldn't see. And Dante, her husband, her stranger, her warden, was the only thing standing between her and whatever was coming. She didn't sleep that night. And when the sun finally rose, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink that should have been beautiful, all she could think about was Victoria Castellano's smile and the clock ticking down on her 1-year escape plan. 340 days left. If she lived that long, the money trail led nowhere. Dante's people traced the deposits back to a shell company in the Cayman Islands, then to another in Luxembourg, then to a third in Singapore before the trail went cold. Whoever had set up Aurelia's account knew exactly how to hide their tracks. Professional. Careful. Someone who understood how these systems worked. "It's a message," Dante said 3 days later, standing in his study with his arms crossed. "Someone wants me to know they can get to you. That you're not as protected as I think." Aurelia sat in one of the leather chairs across from his desk, still wearing the jeans and sweater she'd thrown on that morning. "Or they're trying to make me look dirty, make you doubt me." "I don't doubt you." He said it flatly, like stating a fact. "But others will. That's the point." "So what do we do?" "We wait. They'll make another move eventually, and when they do, we'll be ready." He checked his phone, already half distracted. "In the meantime, you have a dinner tonight." She blinked. "What?" "Charity fundraiser, cancer research or something? Several families will be there, including the Russos." He scrolled through his messages. "We need to be seen together, united front." "You could have mentioned this earlier." "I'm mentioning it now. Mrs. Chen will have something appropriate for you to wear. We leave at 7. And that was it. Conversation over. He went back to his phone, effectively dismissing her. Aurelia stood, frustration simmering in her chest. "You know, for someone who's supposed to be my husband, you're really bad at communication." Dante looked up, one eyebrow raised. "We're not a real marriage, Aurelia. We're a strategic alliance. I don't need to communicate. I need to give you information when it's relevant." "Right, because I'm just a prop." "You're a partner in a business arrangement," he corrected. "There's a difference." "Is there?" Something flickered across his face, annoyance maybe, or surprise that she was pushing back. "Do you want honesty? Fine. You're here because your family needed money and mine needed legitimacy. We both got what we wanted. Everything else is window dressing. Window dressing that someone's trying to frame for treason, which I'm handling. By keeping me in the dark. By keeping you safe." His voice sharpened. "You don't know these people, Aurelia. You don't know what they're capable of. The less you know, the less dangerous you are to them." "That's the second time you've said that. You told that man you were eavesdropping." "Not a question." She lifted her chin. "I live here. I hear things." Dante set down his phone, giving her his full attention for the first time since she'd walked in. "Let me make something very clear. The world I operate in doesn't have room for curiosity. People who ask too many questions end up answering uncomfortable ones. You want to survive the next 12 months? Stop listening at doors and start trusting that I know what I'm doing. Trust has to be earned. Then I guess we both have work to do." He picked up his phone again. 7 o'clock. Don't be late. The dress Mrs. Chen laid out was midnight blue, elegant and conservative, with a neckline that didn't show too much and a hemline that hit just below the knee. Expensive, obviously. Probably cost more than Aurelia used to make in a month. She put it on mechanically, zipped it up, stared at herself in the mirror. She looked like someone's wife, someone's accessory. The thought made her want to scream. Instead, she put on the diamond earrings Dante had given her, a wedding present she hadn't asked for, and went downstairs. Dante was waiting in the foyer wearing a dark suit that probably cost more than the dress. He looked her over briefly, his expression unreadable. "You look appropriate," he said. "What a compliment." His mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Let's go." The fundraiser was held at a hotel downtown, one of those old buildings with marble columns and crystal chandeliers that made you feel underdressed no matter what you wore. The ballroom was packed with people in expensive clothes drinking expensive wine and pretending to care about cancer research while they really networked and made deals. Dante's hand rested on her lower back as they walked in, the same impersonal touch from the wedding, playing the part. She smiled and nodded as he introduced her to people whose names she wouldn't remember, shook hands with women who looked her up and down like they were calculating her worth. "Dante!" A man approached, maybe 50, with silver hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Good to see you." "Frank." Dante's grip on her waist tightened slightly. "This is my wife, Aurelia." "Aurelia, Frank Russo." The name clicked. The Russos. One of the rival families Dante had mentioned. "Congratulations on your marriage," Frank said, extending his hand. "Quite the surprise for everyone." Aurelia shook his hand. His grip was firm, assessing. Thank you. I have to admit, I didn't think Dante was the marrying type. Frank's smile widened. Too focused on business, I always thought. But here you are, proving me wrong. Love makes fools of us all, Dante said smoothly. Does it? Frank looked between them, something calculating in his expression. Well, I hope you'll both be very happy. Marriage is such a delicate thing. Takes work to make it last. We're committed to putting in the effort, Aurelia said, surprising herself. Frank laughed. I'm sure you are. He clapped Dante on the shoulder. We should talk soon. About those shipments. My office, next week. Looking forward to it. Frank nodded to Aurelia. Lovely to meet you, Mrs. Morelli. He walked away, disappearing into the crowd. What was that about? Aurelia asked quietly. Posturing. Dante's hand was still on her waist. He's testing boundaries, seeing how we react. And we just showed him we're a united front. He guided her toward the bar. Which is exactly what we needed to do. They got drinks, wine for her, whiskey for him, and spent the next hour circulating. More introductions, more small talk, more careful navigation of conversations that seemed innocent but weren't. Aurelia watched Dante work, saw how he shifted his tone and body language depending on who he was talking to. Warm with allies, cool with rivals, neutral with everyone else. It was exhausting. She was standing by the windows, taking a break from smiling, when someone touched her elbow. Mrs. Morelli. She turned. Vittoria Castellano stood there, wearing a black dress that probably cost more than a car, and a smile that made Aurelia's skin crawl. Vittoria, she said carefully, you look lovely tonight. Vittoria's eyes swept over her. That color suits you, very elegant. Thank you. How are you settling in? I imagine it's quite an adjustment joining the family. I'm managing. I'm sure you are. Vittoria sipped her champagne. Dante's fortunate to have found someone so adaptable. Not everyone could handle this life. There was something in her tone, not quite mocking, but close. Aurelia kept her expression neutral. It has its challenges. Oh, I'm sure it does. Vittoria leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. Between you and me, I was surprised when Dante announced the engagement. He's always been so independent. I didn't think he'd ever settle down. People change. Do they? Vittoria's smile sharpened. Or do they just adapt to new circumstances? Before Aurelia could respond, Dante appeared at her side. Vittoria, he said coldly, I didn't realize you were invited. Frank Russo was kind enough to include me on his guest list. Vittoria's tone stayed pleasant. I was just getting to know your lovely wife. She's quite charming. I'm sure she is. Dante's hand found Aurelia's waist again, possessive. If you'll excuse us. He steered Aurelia away before Vittoria could respond. They moved through the crowd until they reached a quieter corner near the entrance. I told you to stay away from her, Dante said, his voice low. She came up to me. What was I supposed to do, run away? Yes, if necessary. Aurelia pulled away from his grip. You can't expect me to avoid everyone you don't like. We're at a party full of your business associates. Vittoria isn't a business associate. She's... He stopped, jaw tight. She's what? Complicated. He glanced back toward where Vittoria had been standing. Just trust me on this. Stay away from her. You keep saying that word, trust, but you won't tell me why. Dante's expression hardened. Because some things are better left alone. Even if they affect me? Especially then. They stared at each other, tension crackling in the small space between them. For a moment, Aurelia thought he might actually explain. Tell her something real. Instead, he checked his watch. We've been here long enough. Let's go. The drive home was silent. Dante spent the entire trip on his phone typing messages and making calls in rapid Italian that Aurelia couldn't follow. She stared out the window and wondered how much longer she could stand being kept in the dark. When they got back to the house, she went straight to her room without saying goodnight. She changed out of the dress, washed off the makeup, crawled into bed still wound tight with frustration and confusion. She was almost asleep when her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You handled yourself well tonight. Keep it up, and you might just survive this. Her heart stopped. She stared at the screen, reading the message twice, 3 times. Then she grabbed her laptop and logged into her bank account. Another deposit, $10,000. Posted 2 hours ago. Consultation services. Her hands were shaking. Someone had been watching her at the fundraiser. Someone had seen her talking to Vittoria, to Frank Russo, to all those other people whose names she'd already forgotten, and they were paying her for it. She should tell Dante. Should run downstairs right now and show him the text, the deposit, everything. But something stopped her. A small, stubborn part of her brain that said, "You're not just a prop. You're not just window dressing. Figure this out yourself." She pulled up the text again and typed a response. "Who is this?" The reply came almost immediately. "A friend. Someone who believes you deserve to know the truth." What truth? About what really happened to Dante's father. About who's been pulling the strings all along. About why you were chosen for this marriage. Aurelia's pulse hammered in her ears. "Tell me." "Not yet. First, you need to prove you're ready to hear it. Go to Dante's study. Look in the bottom drawer of his desk, under the false bottom. There's a file marked Castellano. Read it. Then we'll talk." The conversation ended. No matter how many times she texted back, there was no response. She sat in bed, staring at her phone, her mind racing. This was insane. Breaking into Dante's study, going through his files, that was a line she couldn't uncross. But someone was setting her up. Someone was using her name, her accounts, her identity, and Dante wouldn't tell her why. The less you know, the less dangerous you are to them. Except she was already dangerous. The deposits proved that. Whoever was behind this had already decided she was involved. So maybe it was time to actually get involved. She waited until 1 in the morning when the house was dark and silent. Then she slipped out of her room and down the stairs, barefoot on the cold marble floors. Dante's study was on the first floor, down a long hallway past the formal dining room. The door was unlocked. She slipped inside, closing it quietly behind her. The study was dark except for the moonlight filtering through the windows. She didn't dare turn on a lamp. Instead, she used her phone's flashlight, keeping the beam low as she moved to the desk. The bottom drawer was locked. Of course it was. She searched the desk, looking for a key. Nothing in the top drawers, nothing in the side compartments. She was about to give up when she noticed a small gap between the desk and the wall. She reached into the space and felt something metal. A key taped to the underside of the desk. Her hands were shaking as she unlocked the drawer and pulled it open. Files organized alphabetically. She flipped through them until she found one marked Castellano. The file was thick, full of documents and photographs. She pulled it out and started reading by the light of her phone. Financial records, shipping manifests, emails between Vittoria Castellano and someone named Antonio, Dante's father, based on the context. The dates went back years to when Dante was still a teenager. She kept reading, her stomach sinking with each page. Vittoria had been Antonio Morelli's mistress, not just his logistics coordinator, his partner in every sense. The financial record showed money moving between accounts, large sums that didn't match any legitimate business expenses. The emails were coded, but the meaning was clear enough. They'd been running a side operation, something separate from the main family business. And then, 2 years ago, Antonio had died. Car accident, according to the official report. But tucked into the back of the file was a police report that told a different story. Brake lines cut, steering mechanism tampered with, evidence of sabotage that had been suppressed, buried under a ruling of mechanical failure. Aurelia's hands were shaking so hard she almost dropped the file. Antonio Morelli had been murdered, and based on these documents, Vittoria Castellano had been the last person to see him alive. She heard footsteps in the hallway. Panic flooded through her. She shoved the file back into the drawer, locked it, and was reaching up to return the key when the study door opened. Dante stood there, silhouetted in the doorway. "What are you doing in here?" Aurelia straightened, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. "I couldn't sleep. I was looking for a book." "In my desk?" She held up the key, deciding honesty was less damaging than an obvious lie. "Someone told me to look." His expression went very still. "Who?" "I don't know. I got a text." She pulled out her phone, showed him the messages. Dante read them, his face unreadable. Then he looked at her, and something in his eyes made her take a step back. You went through my files, he said quietly. Yes. After I explicitly told you to stay out of this. Someone's been depositing money into my account and claiming I'm consulting for them. I have a right to know why. You have a right to stay alive, Dante snapped, which is what I've been trying to ensure by keeping you out of this mess. Well, I'm in it now. She lifted her chin. Your father was murdered. Vittoria was involved. And someone wants me to know about it. The silence that followed was deafening. Dante walked into the study and closed the door behind him. He took the phone from her hands and read the messages again, his jaw tight. How long have you been getting these texts? He asked. That was the first one. And the deposits? Started 3 weeks ago. 12,000 total before tonight. 10 more after the fundraiser. He pulled out his own phone and made a call. I need a trace on a number. Now. He rattled off the digits from the unknown sender, then hung up. It'll take a few hours. Dante. Don't. He held up a hand. Don't apologize. Don't explain. Just don't. You went behind my back. You invaded my privacy. You could have gotten yourself killed. I need to know what's happening. What's happening is someone's playing a very dangerous game, and they're using you as a pawn. He tossed her phone onto the desk. Congratulations. You just made yourself a target. I was already a target? The words burst out of her, sharp and angry. From the moment I married you, I became a piece on someone else's board. At least now I know what game we're playing. You don't know anything. Then tell me. She stepped closer, refusing to back down. Your father was murdered. Vittoria was his mistress. She was running some kind of side operation with him, and then he died and she's still here, still working for you. Why? If she killed him, why haven't you… Because I don't have proof, Dante said flatly. I have suspicions. I have financial records that look bad and emails that could mean anything. But I don't have proof, and in this world, suspicions get you killed. So you're just waiting. I'm building a case, carefully, quietly, making sure that when I move against her, I have everything I need to bury her so deep she never surfaces again. His eyes were hard, and I was doing it without putting you in danger, until you decided to play detective. Aurelia's anger deflated slightly. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be smart. He picked up her phone again. Whoever sent this wants you digging into Vittoria, which means they either want to help expose her or they want to use you to flush her out. Either way, you're bait. So what do? We spring the trap. He looked at her. But carefully. And together. The word hung in the air between them. Together. Not him handling it while she stayed in the dark. Not her sneaking around behind his back, actually working as a team. You want my help, she said slowly. I want you alive. And the best way to ensure that is to control the situation. He pocketed both phones. Someone wants you investigating Vittoria. Fine. We'll investigate. But on our terms. How? By making them think they're winning. He walked to the door, then paused. Get some sleep. Tomorrow, we start playing the game properly. He left before she could respond, closing the door quietly behind him. Aurelia stood in the dark study, her mind racing. 48 hours ago, she'd been planning to coast through 12 months of marriage without making waves. Now she was caught in the middle of a murder investigation, with someone pulling strings she couldn't see, and a husband who'd just decided she was useful. She should have been terrified. Instead, she felt something like relief. At least now she knew what she was fighting. The next morning, Dante called her into his study after breakfast. He looked like he hadn't slept, his shirt slightly rumpled, a coffee cup leaving rings on a stack of papers. The number's a burner, he said without preamble. Untraceable. Whoever's texting you knows what they're doing. So we're stuck. Not necessarily. He pulled up something on his laptop, turned it so she could see. Financial records, similar to the ones she'd found in the Castellano file. I've been tracking money movements for the last 2 years, trying to figure out where Vittoria's been hiding her side operation. Aurelia leaned closer, studying the screen. These accounts are all overseas. Shell companies mostly, money flowing through, then disappearing into other accounts. He pointed to a series of transactions. See this pattern? Every third week, 50,000 moves from here to here to here, then vanishes. It's been happening like clockwork since 6 months before my father died. What's it for? That's what I need to find out. He closed the laptop. And that's where you come in. Me? Whoever's texting you wants you close to Vittoria, wants you asking questions, digging around. So we're going to give them what they want. Aurelia's stomach twisted. You want me to get close to her? I want you to make her think you're an asset, someone she can use. His eyes met hers. She's already testing you. The comments at the wedding, approaching you at the fundraiser. She's trying to figure out if you're naive or ambitious. We're going to show her ambitious. And if she realizes I'm working for you, she already knows you're working for me. You're my wife. He stood, coming around the desk. The question is whether she thinks you're loyal. We need to make her doubt that. How? By letting her see cracks in our marriage. Small things. You questioning my decisions, me shutting you down. Her thinking you're unhappy, looking for leverage, maybe willing to trade information for protection. He crossed his arms. It's not that different from what's already happening. Except now it's deliberate. Exactly. Aurelia thought about it. Pretending to be unhappy wouldn't be hard. Half the time, she actually was unhappy. And if it helped them figure out who killed Dante's father, who was setting her up? What do you need me to do? She asked. Start small. Next time you see Vittoria, let her know things aren't perfect, that I'm distant, controlling, keeping you in the dark. See how she responds. And if she tries to recruit me, you play along, carefully. His jaw tightened. But Aurelia, if at any point this gets dangerous, if you feel threatened, you pull out immediately. Understood? She nodded. Say it. If it gets dangerous, I pull out. Good. He checked his watch. You have a lunch today, the Wives' Charity Committee. I do? Mrs. Chen put it on your calendar. Several of the family wives get together monthly. Good opportunity to build relationships. He pulled out his phone. Vittoria usually attends. Of course she did. The lunch was at a restaurant downtown, one of those places with white tablecloths and waiters who made you feel guilty for ordering anything less than $50. Aurelia arrived exactly on time and was shown to a private room where 6 women sat around a long table, all of them dressed like they'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. Aurelia! One of them stood, a blonde woman maybe 30, wearing a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than Aurelia's car used to. I'm so glad you could make it. I'm Monica Russo. Russo, as in Frank Russo's wife. Thank you for inviting me, Aurelia said. Of course, we're all family here. Monica gestured to the other women. You know Vittoria, of course. Vittoria sat at the far end of the table wearing dark sunglasses despite being indoors. She raised her champagne glass slightly in greeting. And this is Elena, Sophia, Carla, and Marie. Monica rattled off names Aurelia immediately forgot. Sit, sit. We were just talking about the winter gala. Aurelia took the empty seat, hyper-aware of Vittoria's presence across the table. The conversation flowed around her. Who was donating what? Which venue was best? Whether they should do a silent auction or a raffle. Surface-level stuff that required minimal participation. She picked at her salad and waited. Halfway through the meal, Vittoria spoke. How are you settling in, Aurelia? I know these first few months can be overwhelming. All eyes turned to her. Aurelia set down her fork. It's been an adjustment, she said carefully. I'm sure it has. Vittoria's smile was sympathetic. Going from independent to married overnight must feel like whiplash. Sometimes. And Dante's so busy with business. Must be lonely being in that big house by yourself. The other women exchanged glances. Monica leaned forward slightly, sensing gossip. This was her opening. Aurelia took a breath. It's not what I expected, she admitted. When we got engaged, I thought... She stopped, shaking her head. I don't know what I thought. That you'd actually see your husband occasionally, Vittoria suggested, her tone light. A few of the women laughed. Aurelia forced a smile. Something like that. Men in this business are married to their work first, Monica said, patting her hand. You get used to it. Do you? Aurelia looked at her. Get used to being kept in the dark about everything? The laughter died. Monica pulled her hand back. What do you mean? Sophia asked. I mean... Aurelia stopped, as if catching herself. Nothing. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said anything. No, no. Vittoria leaned forward, her eyes sharp behind the sunglasses. This is a safe space, Aurelia. We all understand what it's like. If something's bothering you, you should talk about it. Aurelia hesitated, playing the part. It's just, I feel like I don't know anything about my own life anymore. Dante makes all the decisions, tells me where to be and when, but never explains why. And if I ask questions, she trailed off. He shuts you down, Vittoria finished. Every time. Silence around the table. The other women looked uncomfortable, like she'd said something they all thought but never spoke aloud. That's not unusual, Monica said carefully. They protect us by keeping us separate from the business. Or they keep us separate because they don't trust us, Aurelia countered. She met Vittoria's eyes. I'm his wife. Shouldn't I at least know what's happening in my own house? Vittoria's smile widened, and Aurelia knew she'd just passed some kind of test. You'd think so, wouldn't you? Vittoria said softly. But trust is a luxury in this world, even between husbands and wives. The conversation shifted after that, moving back to safer topics. But Aurelia felt Vittoria watching her for the rest of the meal, assessing, calculating. When lunch ended, Vittoria caught her by the door. Walk with me, she said. Not a question. They strolled down the street together, Vittoria still wearing her sunglasses despite the cloudy sky. You're unhappy, Vittoria said. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Vittoria glanced at her. I've known Dante since he was 16. Watched him grow up, take over the business after his father died. He's brilliant, ruthless, effective, but he's also paranoid. He trusts no one. Can you blame him? His father was murdered. Vittoria stopped walking. He told you that? Too late. Aurelia realized her mistake. Dante hadn't officially told her anything. She'd found out by breaking into his study. He didn't have to tell me, she said, recovering. I can read between the lines. Can you? Vittoria started walking again. That's a useful skill. Most people in this world prefer comfortable lies to uncomfortable truths. And which do you prefer? I prefer survival. Vittoria stopped in front of a black car, her driver waiting. Let me give you some advice, Aurelia. The same advice I gave you at your wedding. Figure out who your real friends are. Fast. Because the people who smile at you in public might be the same ones planning your funeral in private. Is that what happened to Antonio? The question hung in the air. Vittoria's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her sunglasses. Antonio Morelli died because he trusted the wrong people, she said finally. Don't make the same mistake. She climbed into the car and drove away, leaving Aurelia standing on the sidewalk with her heart pounding. That night, she told Dante everything. He listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker as she described the lunch, the conversation, Vittoria's warning. She's testing you, he said when she finished. Seeing how much you know, how much you suspect. I might have pushed too hard. Mentioning your father's murder was exactly right. He stood, pacing. She needs to think you're smart enough to be useful, but reckless enough to be controlled. You just showed her both. So what now? Now we wait. She'll reach out again, try to pull you closer. He stopped pacing, looking at her. And when she does, you let her. Aurelia's phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. Well done. She's interested. Next step, check your old apartment. There's something there you need to see. She showed Dante. He read it twice, his jaw tight. Your old apartment? I gave it up when we got married. The landlord was supposed to clear it out. Apparently not. He grabbed his keys. Let's go. They drove across the city in silence, Dante's hands tight on the wheel. The apartment building was exactly as Aurelia remembered. Shabby, in need of paint, with a broken intercom and stairs that creaked. She led him to the third floor to the door marked 3B. It was unlocked. Dante pulled a gun from his jacket before pushing the door open. Aurelia's stomach dropped at the sight of the weapon, the casual way he held it. The apartment was empty. Her furniture was gone, the walls bare, but sitting in the middle of the living room floor was a cardboard box. Dante approached it carefully, gun still drawn. He nudged it with his foot, then holstered the weapon and opened the flaps. Inside were files. Dozens of them. Financial records, shipping manifests, emails. The same kind of documents Aurelia had found in Dante's study, but more. Years' worth of evidence. And on top, a note written in neat handwriting. Everything you need to destroy her. Use it wisely. Dante picked up the note, his expression unreadable. Someone just handed us Vittoria's entire operation, he said quietly. Who? I don't know. He started going through the files, his movements quick and efficient. But whoever they are, they want her gone as badly as we do. Aurelia knelt beside him, helping sort the documents. Financial fraud, smuggling, connections to rival families, evidence of Vittoria playing both sides, selling information, manipulating everyone. And buried near the bottom, a police report, the original one, before it was suppressed, detailing exactly how Antonio Morelli's car had been sabotaged, signed by the investigating officer, dated 3 days before he'd mysteriously retired and moved to Florida. This is it, Dante breathed. This is everything. Why now? Aurelia asked. Why give it to us now? Because someone wants Vittoria exposed, and they're using us to do it. He pulled out his phone and made a call. I need a team at this address. Now. Everything in this apartment gets cataloged and secured. While they waited, Aurelia's phone buzzed again. You have the evidence. Now you need to use it. Vittoria's planning something. Soon. If you don't move first, you won't get another chance. She showed Dante. He read it, his expression grim. Tomorrow night, he said, there's a meeting with the other families. All the major players will be there, including Vittoria and Frank Russo. He looked at Aurelia. We present the evidence then, publicly. Force everyone to see what she's been doing. And if it backfires, then we die. He said it matter-of-factly. But if we do nothing, we die anyway. At least this way, we go down fighting. His team arrived, men in dark suits who moved through the apartment with military precision, packing everything into secure containers. Dante supervised, making calls, issuing orders. Aurelia watched him work and realized something. This was who he really was, not the distant, cold man who barely spoke to her at breakfast. This was Dante Morelli at full power, focused, dangerous, absolutely in control. And tomorrow night, he was going to destroy the woman who'd killed his father, if they survived that long. They worked through the night, Dante's team spreading documents across the dining room table in careful rows. Financial records here, shipping manifests there, emails organized by date. By 3 a.m, they had a timeline that stretched back 5 years showing exactly how Vittoria had been operating, skimming money, selling information to rivals, playing families against each other while pretending to serve them all. Aurelia sat at the far end of the table, reading through witness statements that had been buried or paid off. A port worker who'd seen Vittoria meeting with Frank Russo's men. A mechanic who'd been asked to sabotage Antonio Morelli's car and had refused, then mysteriously lost his job 3 days later. A banker who'd processed transfers he knew were dirty, but kept quiet because Vittoria had something on him. This is enough to bury her 10 times over, one of Dante's men said, a stocky guy named Marco who'd been organizing the financial files. It's enough if people believe it, Dante corrected. He stood by the window, his 4th cup of coffee going cold in his hand. Vittoria's been in this game for 20 years. She's got friends, leverage, secrets on half the families in the city. We need to present this so cleanly that nobody can deny it. What about the cop? Aurelia asked, holding up the police report. The one who investigated your father's death. Could we get him to testify? He's dead, Dante said flatly. Heart attack 6 months after he retired. 52 years old, no prior health issues. The room went quiet. Of course he is, Aurelia muttered. Dante turned to look at her. You should get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be long. I'm not tired. You're exhausted. I can see it from here. She was, but admitting it felt like weakness. I want to help. You are helping, but you're no good to me if you collapse. He set down his coffee. Go. I'll wake you if anything changes. She wanted to argue, but her body was already betraying her, eyes burning with fatigue, hands shaking slightly from too much adrenaline and not enough rest. She stood, her legs stiff from sitting too long. Don't make any decisions without me, she said. Dante's mouth twitched, almost a smile. Wouldn't dream of it. She made it to her room and fell into bed without changing, her mind still racing through everything they'd uncovered. Vittoria had been there all along, trusted by Antonio, welcomed into the family, given access to everything. and she'd used it to destroy him. The question was why. Money was part of it, obviously, but Vittoria had been wealthy already, comfortable. There had to be something else, some reason she'd turned against the man she'd supposedly loved. Aurelia was still turning it over in her mind when sleep finally dragged her under. She woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the smell of coffee. For a disorienting moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then it all came rushing back, the files, the evidence, the meeting tonight where they'd either expose Vittoria or get themselves killed. She stumbled to the bathroom, splashed cold water on her face, stared at herself in the mirror. She looked tired, drawn, dark circles under her eyes that makeup probably wouldn't cover. Her hair was a mess, still pinned up from yesterday's lunch. Yesterday. Had it really only been yesterday that she'd sat with those women, pretending to be an unhappy wife? It felt like weeks ago. She showered quickly, changed into jeans and a sweater, and went downstairs. The dining room was empty now, all the documents cleared away. Mrs. Chen was in the kitchen, preparing breakfast with her usual quiet efficiency. Mr. Morelli is in his study, she said before Aurelia could ask. Thank you. She found him exactly where she expected, sitting behind his desk with his laptop open and more coffee at his elbow. He'd changed clothes at some point, but he still looked like he hadn't slept. Morning, she said from the doorway. He glanced up. There's food in the kitchen. I know. Mrs. Chen told me. She came in and sat down across from him. Did you sleep at all? No. Dante, I'm fine. He closed the laptop. We have a problem. Her stomach dropped. What kind of problem? Marco called an hour ago. Vittoria knows something's wrong. She's been making calls all night, reaching out to her contacts, asking questions. Someone tipped her off. Who? That's what I'd like to know. His jaw was tight. Only 6 people knew what we found last night. My team, you, and me. And I trust my team with my life. The implication hung in the air between them. You think I told her? Aurelia said slowly. Did you? No. The word came out harder than she intended. I spent the night asleep in my room. You can check my phone if you don't believe me. I already did. The casual violation should have made her angry. Instead, she just felt tired. And you didn't make any calls or send any texts. He leaned back in his chair. But someone did. Someone who knew exactly what we were planning and exactly who to warn. Your team has been with me for years, some of them since before my father died. I'd stake my life on their loyalty. Then who? Aurelia stood, frustration boiling over. Because if you're going to accuse me, at least have the guts to do it directly instead of dancing around it. I'm not accusing you. His voice stayed level. I'm trying to figure out who's playing us. Because right now, someone is 3 steps ahead, and I don't like not knowing who. The person who's been texting me. Obviously. So what do we do? Dante pulled out his phone and set it on the desk between them. We accelerate the timeline. The meeting's tonight at 8. We present the evidence, expose Vittoria, and hope we survive the fallout. That's your plan? Hope? You have a better one? She didn't. That was the worst part. They were trapped in someone else's game, reacting instead of controlling, and every move they made could be the wrong one. What do you need me to do? She asked. Stay visible. Go about your day normally. If Vittoria's watching, we don't want her to know we're preparing for war. He stood, coming around the desk. And tonight, you're coming to the meeting with me. What? You're my wife. You should be there. His eyes met hers. And frankly, I don't trust leaving you here alone. Not anymore. The admission surprised her. Not that he didn't trust her safety to others, but that he'd actually said it out loud. Okay, she said. I'll be there. Good. He checked his watch. You have a call with your mother in 10 minutes. Mrs. Chen put it on your calendar. How do you know about my calls with my mother? I know everything that happens in this house, Aurelia. That's how I stay alive. She left him to his planning and went to take the call in the sitting room. Her mother answered on the second ring, her voice bright and cheerful in a way that made Aurelia's chest ache. Sweetheart, how are you? We haven't talked in days. I'm fine, Mom. Just busy? Of course, of course. Married life keeps you running, doesn't it? Her mother laughed. Your father wants to know if you and Dante will come for dinner soon, maybe next Sunday. I'll have to check with Dante. Such a busy man, but so devoted to you, I can tell. The way he looked at you at the wedding. Mom, Aurelia cut her off gently. Can I ask you something? Of course, honey, anything. When you married Dad, were you ever scared? Her mother went quiet for a moment. Why are you asking? Just curious. Another pause. Then, I was terrified. Your father's family was so different from mine. They had money, connections, this whole world I didn't understand. And he was so focused on work, always busy, never home. I thought I'd made a terrible mistake. What changed? Time, I suppose. And realizing that marriage isn't about perfect moments. It's about choosing to stay even when it's hard. Her mother's voice softened. Is everything okay, Aurelia? You sound worried. I'm fine, Aurelia lied. Just adjusting. It gets easier, I promise. Her mother paused. And if you ever need to talk, really talk, I'm here. You know that, right? I know. Thanks, Mom. They talked for a few more minutes about nothing important before hanging up. Aurelia sat in the quiet sitting room, staring at her phone, wondering what her mother would say if she knew the truth. That her daughter had married into a crime family. That there was a woman out there who'd killed Dante's father and was probably planning to kill them next. That the only thing standing between Aurelia and death was a husband who barely knew her and a pile of evidence that might not be enough. Her phone buzzed. Not her mother. The unknown number. Tonight's your chance. Don't waste it, and whatever you do, don't trust anyone who claims to be helping you. In this world, everyone has an agenda. She stared at the message, her heart pounding. Then she took a screenshot and sent it to Dante. His reply came immediately. Noted. Stay alert. The rest of the day crawled by. Aurelia tried to read, to watch TV, to do anything that would distract her from the clock ticking toward 8. Mrs. Chen brought lunch at noon, dinner at 6. Both times, Aurelia barely tasted the food. At 7, she went upstairs to change. Dante had left a dress on her bed. Black, elegant, professional. The kind of thing you wore to a business meeting, not a party. She put it on, along with the diamond earrings again, and stared at herself in the mirror. She looked like someone who belonged in Dante's world. Polished, expensive, untouchable. She looked like a lie. Downstairs, Dante was waiting in the foyer, wearing a dark suit, his expression grim. 2 of his men flanked him, both armed. Marco was there too, carrying a briefcase that Aurelia knew contained copies of all the evidence they'd compiled. Ready? Dante asked. As I'll ever be. They drove in a convoy, 2 SUVs and the limousine, all with tinted windows and armed security. Aurelia sat beside Dante in the back of the limo, her hands clasped in her lap to keep them from shaking. Where's this meeting? She asked. Neutral Ground, a restaurant owned by the Bernardis. They're not aligned with any particular family, which makes it safer. He glanced at her. Stay close to me. Don't talk unless someone asks you a direct question. And if anything goes wrong, what kind of wrong? Any kind. If shooting starts, if someone pulls a weapon, if I tell you to run, you run. Don't look back. Don't wait for me. Just get out. Dante. Promise me, Aurelia. She met his eyes. They were hard, determined, but underneath there was something else. Fear, maybe. Or concern. For her. I promise, she said. The restaurant was in the old part of the city, a converted warehouse with exposed brick and dim lighting. They parked in the back, and Dante's men swept the area before allowing them to exit the car. Inside, the main dining room had been cleared. A long table dominated the center, surrounded by chairs. People were already arriving. Frank Russo with his wife Monica and 2 bodyguards. The Bernardi brothers, Carlo and Vincent, looking uncomfortable in suits. A woman Aurelia didn't recognize, older, with steel gray hair and cold eyes. And Vittoria Castellano, wearing red and smiling like she owned the room. She saw Aurelia and Dante enter, and her smile widened. Dante, Aurelia, so glad you could make it. She air-kissed both their cheeks, her perfume cloying. I wasn't sure you'd come. Wouldn't miss it, Dante said smoothly. They took their seats, Aurelia beside Dante, Marco standing behind them with the briefcase. More people filed in, representatives from smaller families, associates, allies. By the time everyone was seated, there were maybe 20 people in the room. Carlo Bernardi stood at the head of the table, clearing his throat. "Thank you all for coming. We're here tonight to discuss territory agreements and—" "Actually," Dante interrupted, standing, "we're here because someone in this room is a traitor." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. "Excuse me?" Frank Russo leaned forward. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about someone who's been playing all of us, skimming money, selling information, manipulating families into conflicts while she profits from the chaos." Dante's eyes locked on Vittoria. "And I have proof." Vittoria's expression didn't change. If anything, she looked amused. "This should be interesting," she said. Marco opened the briefcase and began distributing folders to everyone at the table. Financial records, shipping manifests, emails, the same evidence Aurelia had spent the night reviewing. 5 years ago, Dante said, Vittoria Castellano began siphoning money from my father's operations. Small amounts at first, buried in legitimate expenses. But over time it grew. Millions of dollars diverted into offshore accounts. "These are forgeries," Vittoria said calmly. "Anyone can fake financial records." "Then explain the shipping manifests, the ones showing your signature authorizing shipments that never reached their destinations, goods that were rerouted to Frank Russo's warehouses." Frank's eyes widened. He looked down at the papers in front of him, his face going pale. "I never authorized—" "Of course you didn't," Dante said. "Vittoria did it for you, made it look like you were stealing from us, hoping to start a war. And when my father got too close to figuring it out, she had him killed." The room erupted, everyone talking at once, shouting questions, accusations flying. Vittoria stood slowly, her smile finally fading. "You have no proof of that," she said. "Don't I?" Dante pulled out the police report, the original one. "This is the investigating officer's report from my father's accident. It clearly states that the brake lines were cut, the steering mechanism tampered with. Murder, not mechanical failure. But somehow, this report was buried and replaced with a ruling of accidental death. Officers make mistakes. The officer who wrote this retired 3 days later and died 6 months after that. 52 years old, perfect health, sudden heart attack." Dante's voice was cold, controlled. "You want to tell me that's a coincidence?" Vittoria's eyes flickered to the door, calculating distances. Dante's men had already moved to block the exits. "Even if all of this were true," Vittoria said, "you have no witnesses, no one who can tie me directly to Antonio's death." "Actually," a voice said from the back of the room, "we do." Everyone turned. A man stepped forward from the shadows, someone Aurelia had never seen before. He was maybe 60, gray-haired, wearing an ill-fitting suit. "My name is Thomas Berkeley," he said. "I was the mechanic asked to sabotage Antonio Morelli's car. I refused, but I saw who did it instead." He pointed at Vittoria. "Her. I watched her work on that car 3 days before Antonio died." Vittoria's mask finally cracked. "You're lying." "I have photos," Berkeley said, "taken from the security camera in my shop. I kept them as insurance in case she ever came after me. I've been hiding for 2 years, but when I heard about this meeting, I decided it was time to stop running." He pulled out his phone and projected images onto the wall, grainy but clear enough. Vittoria in coveralls, working under a car, timestamps showing the date, license plate visible, Antonio Morelli's Mercedes. The silence was absolute. Then Frank Russo stood, his face red with fury. "You set me up," he said to Vittoria. "You made it look like I was stealing, tried to start a war between our families. Oh, Frank, don't be naive." Vittoria's voice had changed, all the smoothness gone. "You were already stealing. I just made sure the blame went to the right people. And it would have worked perfectly if this idiot," she gestured at Dante, "had done what he was supposed to and gone to war with you instead of investigating." "Why?" Aurelia asked. The question came out before she could stop it. Vittoria turned to her, and for the first time Aurelia saw real hatred in her eyes. "Because I was tired of being a mistress, tired of hiding in the shadows while Antonio played happy family. He promised me we'd be together, that he'd leave his wife, but he never did. So I took what I was owed." She smiled, cold and bitter. "The money, the power, the empire. I built this operation from nothing, and I deserve to run it, not Dante, Not some boy who inherited everything because of his last name. You killed my father for jealousy, Dante said quietly. I killed him because he was weak. Vittoria's voice rose, and because he was going to cut me out. He found out about the accounts, the side deals. He was going to expose me, ruin everything I'd built, so I ruined him first. The confession hung in the air, damning and complete. Frank Russo stood. I vote we turn her over to the police. The police won't touch her, Carlo Bernardi said. She's got half the department on her payroll. Then we handle it ourselves, someone else said. Arguments broke out again, everyone shouting at once. Vittoria stood in the center of it all, her face calm again, as if she'd already accepted her fate. Then she moved. Fast, faster than Aurelia would have thought possible. Vittoria lunged for the woman with gray hair, the one Aurelia didn't recognize, and held something to her throat. A knife, small but deadly, appeared from somewhere in her dress. Everyone stay back, Vittoria said, her voice steady, or Elena dies. Elena. Aurelia remembered now. One of the women from the lunch, Monica Russo's friend. Except based on the way Frank Russo had gone white, she was more than that. Family, maybe. Someone important. Let her go, Dante said, his hand moving toward his jacket. Don't. Vittoria pressed the knife closer. Elena whimpered. I walk out of here, no one follows, and she lives. Try to stop me, and I cut her throat right here. You won't make it to the door, Marco said. Maybe not, but she'll still be dead. Vittoria started backing toward the exit, dragging Elena with her. I've got nothing to lose at this point, do you? For a frozen moment, nobody moved. Then Aurelia heard herself speak. You're forgetting something, she said. Vittoria's eyes snapped to her. What? The texts. The person who's been feeding me information, setting all of this up. They're still out there, and they wanted you exposed. Aurelia took a step forward, ignoring Dante's warning look. Which means they're not done yet. Even if you walk out of here, even if you disappear, they'll find you, because whoever they are, they know everything. Every account, every contact, every place you might hide. You're bluffing, am I? Aurelia pulled out her phone, showed the messages. They've been 3 steps ahead this entire time. They gave us the evidence, brought Berkeley here, orchestrated this whole meeting. You think they're just going to let you walk away? Vittoria's hand wavered slightly. Put down the knife, Aurelia said quietly. It's over. You lost. For a long, tense moment, Vittoria stared at her. Then she laughed, high and sharp. You stupid girl. You really think you're in control here? She shoved Elena away and turned the knife toward Aurelia instead. Let me tell you who's been texting you. Who's been pulling all these strings? She never got to finish. The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space. Vittoria jerked backward, the knife clattering to the floor. She looked down at the bloom of red spreading across her chest, then up at the shooter. Carlo Bernardi stood there holding a pistol, his face grim. Enough, he said. Vittoria collapsed. Elena screamed. Chaos erupted as people rushed forward, some to help Vittoria, others to restrain Carlo. Dante grabbed Aurelia's arm, pulling her back, shielding her with his body. She couldn't see what was happening, couldn't hear anything over the shouting and the ringing in her ears from the gunshot. Then Marco was there, and they were moving, Dante practically carrying her toward a side exit. Out into an alley, into one of the SUVs, the doors slamming shut. Drive, Dante barked at the driver. Now! The vehicle lurched forward. Through the windows, Aurelia could see people spilling out of the restaurant, more shouting, the flash of police lights in the distance. Is she dead? Aurelia asked. Her voice sounded strange, distant. I don't know. Dante's hand was still on her arm, steadying her. Are you hurt? No, I don't think so. She looked down at herself, half expecting to see blood, but there was nothing. Who was that? Who shot her? Carlo Bernardi, which means we have a bigger problem now. Why? Because the Bernardis are supposed to be neutral. If Carlo shot Vittoria, it means someone got to him, convinced him to make a move. Dante's jaw was tight. And we still don't know who. Aurelia's phone buzzed. She pulled it out with shaking hands. The unknown number. Told you not to trust anyone. But you did well tonight. One more step to go. She showed Dante. He read it, his expression darkening. "One more step," he repeated. "What the hell does that mean?" They found out 3 hours later when Marco called with news. Vittoria was alive. Barely. The bullet had missed her heart by inches, and she was in surgery at a private hospital under heavy guard, but she'd regained consciousness briefly and said something to the police before going under. She'd confessed. To everything. Antonio's murder, the money laundering, the manipulation. And she'd named her partner, someone who'd been helping her from the beginning. Someone with access to both families, who could move between territories without suspicion. Someone Dante trusted, his brother. The words hit like a physical blow. Dante went completely still, his face draining of color. "I don't have a brother," he said quietly. "That's what I told them," Marco said over the phone. But Vittoria insisted. Said there's someone in your family, someone close to your father, who helped her orchestrate everything. Aurelia watched Dante process this, saw the moment understanding clicked into place. "Not my brother," he said. "My cousin, Marco." Her head snapped up. Not this Marco, Dante's loyal soldier, the other Marco. The name she'd heard in passing, the family member who'd moved to Europe years ago. "He's been in Italy," Dante continued, but his voice sounded uncertain now. "He hasn't been back since—" His phone rang. Unknown number, he answered it on speaker. "Hello, Dante." The voice was male, accented, familiar somehow. "I think it's time we had a talk." "Who is this?" "Someone who's been watching out for you, making sure you survived long enough to clean up your father's mess." A pause. "My name is Marco Morelli. Antonio was my uncle, and Vittoria Castellano destroyed my family too." Dante's hand tightened on the phone. "Where are you?" "Close. I've been in the city for weeks, watching, waiting, making sure everything went according to plan." Another pause. "Your wife did well tonight, better than I expected." Aurelia's blood ran cold. "You've been texting her," Dante said. "Someone had to make sure she understood what she was getting into. And honestly, she's smarter than you gave her credit for, braver too." "What do you want?" "What I've always wanted, justice for my father. Vittoria killed him too, did you know that? 6 months before Antonio died. Made it look like a heart attack, all because he found out about her operation and threatened to expose her." The pieces were falling into place now. The mysterious texts, the evidence delivered perfectly, the witness appearing at exactly the right moment. All of it orchestrated by someone with intimate knowledge of both the crimes and the family. "Why involve Aurelia?" Dante asked. "Because you weren't listening to me. I tried to warn you about Vittoria years ago, but you were too caught up in running the business to pay attention. So I found another way in, someone you'd have to listen to, someone whose safety you'd care about." Dante looked at Aurelia, something unreadable in his eyes. "Where are you?" he asked again. "Standing behind you," the voice said. They both spun. A man stood in the doorway of the study, late 20s, dark hair, familiar features. He looked like a younger version of Dante, or maybe of Antonio, family, unmistakably. He lowered his phone and smiled. "Hello, cousin," he said. "It's been a long time." Dante's hand moved toward his jacket, but Marco raised both hands, palms out. "I'm not armed," he said, "and I'm not here to fight. I'm here because we're on the same side, whether you believe that or not." "You've been manipulating my wife for weeks," Dante said, his voice dangerously quiet. "You reopened her bank account, planted evidence, sent her into situations that could have gotten her killed. That doesn't sound like the same side to me." "I protected her every step of the way." Marco's eyes shifted to Aurelia. "You think it was coincidence that Vittoria never touched you? That the threats stayed threats and nothing more?" "I made sure of it." "How?" Aurelia asked. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "I have people in Vittoria's organization, had them for years, feeding me information, making sure she didn't cross certain lines. When she started getting interested in you, I made it clear that hurting you would have consequences." Marco moved further into the room, slow and deliberate. "The money in your account? That was bait. I needed Vittoria to think you were working for someone, needed her paranoid and off balance, and I needed Dante to take you seriously." "You used her," Dante said. "I gave her agency." Marco's tone sharpened. Your plan was to keep her locked away in this house, ignorant and useless. Mine was to make her powerful enough to survive what was coming. Tell me which approach actually kept her safe tonight." The words hit harder than Aurelia wanted to admit. She'd felt useless, trapped, infantilized by Dante's protection. But Marco had seen something else. Potential, maybe. Or just a convenient tool. "Why come back now?" she asked. "If you've been watching for years, why reveal yourself tonight?" Because Vittoria's confession changes everything. Marco pulled out his phone, showed them a news article. She named names. Not just me, half the families in the city. People who worked with her, who knew what she was doing and looked the other way because it was profitable. The police are already making arrests. By morning, the entire power structure is going to collapse. Dante took the phone, read the article, his expression darkening with every line. Frank Russo's been arrested, the Lombardis, even some of the Bernardis. Carlo shot Vittoria to shut her up, Marco said. He was in deep with her schemes. But she survived long enough to talk, and now everyone's scrambling. "And you?" Dante looked at his cousin. "She named you too." "She did, but I've been operating under a dozen different identities for the last 5 years. Good luck finding Marco Morelli when he doesn't officially exist anymore." He smiled, thin and bitter. "I learned from the best. Our fathers taught us how to disappear when necessary." "Your father didn't disappear," Aurelia said. "He died." The smile faded. "Yes, he did. And I've spent every day since then making sure Vittoria paid for it." Marco looked at Dante. "You weren't the only one who lost family, but you had the name, the power, the resources to fight back. I had nothing except patience and a really good memory for grudges. So you orchestrated all of this." Dante set down the phone. The evidence, the witness, getting Aurelia involved, all to expose Vittoria. "To expose everyone," Marco corrected. "Vittoria was the architect, but she had help. Lots of it. People who enabled her, who profited from the chaos she created. They all need to fall." "And you're just going to walk away clean?" "I already have." Marco moved to the window, looking out at the city. "I've got a flight to Singapore in 6 hours. New name, new life, new identity. I just wanted to make sure you understood what's happening before I left." "Understood what?" "That you're about to inherit a war zone." Marco turned back to face them. "Every family Vittoria implicated is going to be scrambling for power, trying to fill the vacuum. Territory disputes, revenge killings, chaos. And you're sitting in the middle of it, the legitimate heir to the Morelli Empire, with a wife who just became very famous very quickly." Aurelia's stomach dropped. "What?" "You were at that meeting tonight. You confronted Vittoria, called her out in front of everyone. By tomorrow morning, every news outlet in the city is going to know your name." Marco's expression was almost sympathetic. "You're not invisible anymore, Aurelia. You're a player." "I don't want to be a player." "Too late." He looked at Dante. "You need to decide what you're going to do with her. Keep her locked away and make her a target, or actually teach her how to survive in this world. Because the people coming for you won't care that she's innocent. They'll just see leverage." Dante's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. "One more thing," Marco said, pulling an envelope from his jacket. "This is everything I have on the remaining operations Vittoria was running. Accounts she didn't tell the police about, safe houses, contacts. Consider it a parting gift." He set it on the desk. "Use it wisely." "Why give it to me?" "Because you're family. And despite everything, I don't want to see the Morelli name destroyed completely." Marco moved toward the door, then paused. "Your father would be proud of you, Dante. He always said you had the spine for this business. Just wish he'd lived long enough to see it." "Did you know?" Dante asked suddenly. "When Vittoria killed him, did you know it was coming?" Marco's expression shuddered. "I suspected, but I couldn't prove it, and I couldn't stop it. By the time I figured out what she was planning, it was too late." He looked away. "I tried to warn Antonio. He didn't believe me. Thought I was paranoid, seeing threats that weren't there. And then she killed him, and I realized I should have done more. Should have acted instead of waiting for proof." "Is that why you involved Aurelia?" Dante's voice was quiet. "To make sure I didn't make the same mistake? To force me to act?" "Partially." Marco met his eyes. "But also because she deserved to know what she was married into. You can't protect someone by lying to them, Dante. You can only teach them how to protect themselves." He left before either of them could respond, disappearing into the hallway. They heard the front door open and close, and then he was gone. Aurelia and Dante stood in the study, the silence heavy between them. "He's right," Aurelia said finally, "about teaching me instead of hiding me." "I know." "So why didn't you?" Dante turned to look at her, his expression exhausted. "Because I didn't know if I could trust you. You were a stranger who'd been forced into this marriage. For all I knew, you'd sell me out the first chance you got. And now? Now you've proven you won't." He moved to the desk, picked up the envelope Marco had left. "You had a dozen chances to run tonight, to save yourself and leave me to deal with the fallout. But you didn't." "We're married," she said. "That means something, even if it started as a business deal." "Does it?" He looked at her, something vulnerable in his expression. "You found the exit clause. You know you can walk away in a few months. Why stay?" The question caught her off guard. She'd been asking herself the same thing for weeks now, ever since the deposit started, ever since she'd realized she was caught up in something bigger than a forced marriage. "Because leaving feels like losing," she said finally, "and I'm tired of feeling powerless." Dante studied her face, searching for something. Whatever he found must have satisfied him because he nodded slowly. "Then we do this together," he said. "No more secrets, no more keeping you in the dark. If you're staying, you need to know everything." "Everything?" "Everything." He opened the envelope Marco had left, pulled out the contents. More documents, more evidence. "Starting with this." They spent the next 3 hours going through it all. Accounts in the Cayman Islands, safe houses in 3 countries, a network of contacts that stretched across continents. Vittoria had built an empire within an empire, and now it was all laid out in front of them like a map to buried treasure. "This is millions of dollars," Aurelia said, staring at one of the account statements. "Maybe tens of millions." "Probably more." Dante was making notes, connecting dots. "She's been skimming for years. This is just what Marco could document." "What are you going to do with it?" "Seize it. Every account, every asset. Use it to rebuild what she destroyed." He looked at her. "And to make sure your family's actually taken care of. The debt your father owed, that's nothing compared to this. I can wipe it out completely, set them up for life." "You don't have to do that." "I know, but I want to." His expression softened slightly. "You married me to save them. The least I can do is make sure they're actually safe." The gesture surprised her. Not the practicality of it. Dante always thought in terms of strategy and leverage, but the acknowledgement that her family mattered, that she'd sacrificed something real for them. "Thank you," she said quietly. He nodded, then went back to the documents. They worked in companionable silence, organizing everything into categories. Financial assets here, property holdings there, contacts and connections in a separate pile. Around 2 a.m, Aurelia's phone rang. Her mother, the caller ID said. She almost didn't answer. What could she possibly tell her mother about tonight? But something made her pick up. "Mom?" "Aurelia, thank God." Her mother's voice was shaking. "We've been trying to reach you for hours. Where are you? Are you safe?" "I'm fine. I'm at home with Dante. What's wrong?" "What's wrong? Have you seen the news?" Her mother's voice rose. "They're saying there was a shooting, that crime families are at war, that arrests are happening all over the city. And your name, they mentioned your name, Aurelia. They said you were at some meeting. Mom, slow down. I'm okay. Nothing happened to me." "But you were there. You were at that restaurant when that woman was shot." Aurelia closed her eyes. Of course the media had the story already. Someone at that meeting had talked, or the police had leaked it, or someone had footage. It didn't matter how. The point was that her mother knew. "I was there," she admitted. "But I'm fine. Dante made sure I was safe." "Safe? Aurelia, you married into—" Her mother stopped, took a shaky breath. "I didn't know. Your father said it was business, that the Morellis were legitimate, that you'd be protected. But this is something else entirely." "I know what I married into, Mom." "Do you?" Her mother's voice broke. "Because I don't think I did. And now I'm watching the news and seeing your name next to words like organized crime and murder, and I don't know what to think." Aurelia looked at Dante, who was watching her with an unreadable expression. I need you to trust me, she said to her mother. I know this looks bad, but I'm not in danger. I'm exactly where I need to be. Doing what? Aurelia, what are you involved in? Surviving, and maybe making things better. She took a breath. The woman who was shot tonight, she killed people. Good people. She destroyed families, including Dante's, and she needed to be stopped. And you helped stop her. Yes. The silence on the other end of the line stretched out. Your father's going to lose his mind, her mother said finally. Probably. Are you sure you're safe? As sure as I can be. Another silence. Then, your brother wants to talk to you. Before Aurelia could protest, Marco's voice came through the phone. That was so cool, he said, and she could hear the excitement in his voice. They showed footage on the news. You were there when everything went down. Did you really confront that woman? Marco, everyone at school is talking about it. My sister is married to a mob boss and she took down a criminal. Do you know how awesome that sounds? It's not awesome, Marco. Someone got shot. A bad person got shot. That's different. His voice lowered. Seriously, though, are you okay? Mom's freaking out, but you sound fine. I am fine, she said, and realized it was true. Despite everything, the chaos, the violence, the revelations, she felt more solid than she had in weeks. I'm handling it. Good. Because Dad's pacing around the living room looking like he's going to have a heart attack, and someone needs to tell him you're not going to die. Put him on! Her father's voice was gruff when he came on the line. Aurelia. Hi, Dad. You want to explain to me what the hell happened tonight? Not particularly. That's not funny. I'm not joking. She softened her tone. Look, I can't tell you everything, but I can tell you that I'm safe, that Dante's taking care of me, and that the situation is under control. The situation is under control? They arrested 15 people tonight, including Frank Russo. That's not under control, that's a war. It's cleanup, she corrected. Getting rid of the people who are causing problems. It'll be messy for a while, but it'll settle. How do you know that? Because I've seen the evidence. I know what was happening and why. And I know that the people being arrested deserve it. Her father was quiet for a long moment. You sound different. I am different. I don't know if that's good or bad. Neither do I yet, she admitted, but I'm figuring it out. They talked for a few more minutes before her father handed the phone back to her mother, who extracted promises that Aurelia would call every day, that she'd be careful, that she wouldn't take unnecessary risks. Aurelia agreed to all of it, knowing she couldn't keep most of those promises, but unwilling to worry her mother further. When she finally hung up, Dante was still watching her. Your family's scared, he said. Wouldn't you be? Probably. He set down the papers he'd been reading. You handled that well, kept them calm without lying to them. I learned from watching you work a room. His mouth twitched, almost a smile. I'm a terrible role model. Maybe, but you're effective. They went back to work, but Aurelia's mind kept drifting to what Marco had said. By tomorrow morning, every news outlet in the city is going to know your name. She'd spent her entire life being invisible. The unremarkable daughter, the struggling student, the waitress nobody noticed, and now, suddenly, she was going to be famous for being at the center of the biggest crime scandal in years. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, she felt something like anticipation. What happens next? She asked. Dante looked up from the documents. Next? After tonight, after the arrests and the chaos. What's your plan? Consolidate, he said immediately. The families that survive this are going to be scrambling for territory. We need to move fast, claim what's ours before anyone else does. And the legitimate businesses, the ones your father was building, those too. He leaned back in his chair, the exhaustion finally showing on his face. My father wanted to transition the family out of the illegal operations, make everything clean, legitimate, sustainable. Vittoria fought him on it because she was making too much money from the dirty side. Now that she's gone, I can actually finish what he started. That's going to take years. Probably, but I've got time. He looked at her. We've got time, if you're staying. The implication hung in the air. Not just staying for the next few months until the exit clause kicked in. Staying permanently. Building something together instead of running from it. I haven't decided yet, Aurelia said honestly. Fair enough. He turned back to the documents, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. But for what it's worth, I'd like you to. Stay, I mean. Why? Because you're good at this. Better than I expected. You kept your head tonight, thought on your feet, made the right calls. That's rare. He met her eyes. And because I think we could actually make this work. Not just the marriage, but the partnership. Building something that matters instead of just surviving. The admission surprised her. Dante wasn't the type to talk about feelings or futures. He dealt in facts and strategies, not possibilities. I'll think about it, she said. That's all I'm asking. They worked until dawn, until the first light started creeping through the windows, and Mrs. Chen appeared with coffee and pastries that neither of them had the appetite for. The news was already running the story. Arrests across the city, a massive corruption scandal, ties to organized crime. Aurelia's name appeared in 3 different articles, always as Dante Morelli's wife, Aurelia Vale Morelli, as if her identity had been completely absorbed into his. That's going to take some getting used to, she muttered, reading one of the articles on her phone. You could use your maiden name professionally, Dante said. Keep some separation. Would that bother you? No. Why would it? Because men in your position usually like their wives to take their name, symbol of ownership or whatever. He looked at her, something almost amused in his expression. Aurelia, I've seen you stand up to Vittoria Castellano and my cousin in the same night. I don't think a last name determines who owns what in this relationship. The word relationship hung between them, more loaded than either of them probably intended. Before she could respond, Dante's phone rang. He answered it, listened for a moment, then stood up abruptly. Where? He said into the phone. Then, I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up and looked at Aurelia. That was the hospital. Vittoria's awake, and she's asking to speak to me. You're going. I have to. She might have more information, more names, and I want to hear her say it directly, that she killed my father. His expression hardened. I need that closure. I'm coming with you. Aurelia, you said no more secrets, no more keeping me in the dark. If you're going to confront her, I want to be there. He looked like he wanted to argue, but something in her expression must have convinced him. Fine, he said, but you stay behind me, and if anything feels wrong, we leave. Understood? Understood. They drove to the hospital in tense silence, Dante's security detail following in a second vehicle. The building was surrounded by police cars and news vans, reporters already camped out looking for a story. Dante's people cleared a path through them, ignoring the shouted questions. Inside, they were met by 2 police officers who escorted them to the secure wing where Vittoria was being held. She was in a private room, handcuffed to the bed, with a guard stationed at the door. She looked terrible, pale, weak, tubes and monitors connected to her, but her eyes were still sharp when Dante and Aurelia walked in. I wondered if you'd come, she said. Her voice was rough, probably from the breathing tube. You asked for me, Dante said coldly. What do you want? To tell you the truth. The real truth. Not the sanitized version I gave the police. She coughed, wincing. Sit down. This might take a while. Dante stayed standing. Aurelia moved to stand beside him, a united front. Vittoria's eyes flickered to her. And you brought her. Interesting choice. She's my wife, Dante said. Anything you say to me, you say to her. Your father said the same thing about your mother once, right before I convinced him otherwise. Vittoria smiled, bitter and tired. But fine. Let's do this honestly for once. She told them everything, how she'd started working for Antonio Morelli 25 years ago as a logistics coordinator, how they'd fallen into an affair, how he'd promised to leave his wife but never did, how she'd started skimming money as insurance, building her own operation on the side. I loved him, she said, and for the first time her voice broke. That's the stupid part. I actually loved him. But he loved the family more, loved the legacy, the name, the empire. I was just the woman he kept hidden in the shadows. So you killed him, Dante said flatly. Eventually, after he found out about my side operations and threatened to expose me, he gave me 24 hours to shut everything down and disappear, or he'd turn me over to the police. She laughed, the sound wet and painful. 24 hours to destroy everything I'd built, everything I'd earned, so I made sure he didn't get the chance. And my uncle? Aurelia asked, remembering what Marco had said. Antonio's brother? He suspected, started asking questions, digging into the finances. So yes, I killed him too. Made it look like a heart attack. Easy enough when you know the right people. Dante's hands were clenched into fists at his sides, but his voice stayed level. Why confess now? You could have kept quiet, taken your chances with the police. Because I'm dying, Vittoria said simply. The bullet nicked something important. The doctors say I've got maybe a week, 2 if I'm lucky, and I'm tired of lying, tired of pretending. She looked at Dante. Your father was a good man, flawed but good. He deserved better than what I gave him. And so did you. I don't want your apology. Good. Because I'm not giving one. She coughed again, harder this time. The monitor beside her bed started beeping. I did what I did. I regret the cost, but not the choices. That's the difference between people like me and people like you, Dante. You still think there are right answers. I learned a long time ago that there's just survival. The guard stuck his head in. Everything okay? We're leaving, Dante said. He turned toward the door, then stopped. For what it's worth, I hope you suffer. Every minute of the time you have left. I already am, Vittoria said. And I will be. That's what dying is. They left her there, small and broken in that hospital bed. In the hallway, Dante leaned against the wall, his breathing ragged. You okay? Aurelia asked. No. He looked at her, and for the first time since she'd known him, there were tears in his eyes. But I will be. She took his hand. He gripped it like a lifeline. They stood there for a long moment, 2 people who'd started as strangers in a forced marriage, now bound together by something more complicated than contracts or obligations. Partnership, maybe. Or the beginning of trust. Whatever it was, it felt real. The next week was chaos. More arrests, more revelations, more families implicated in Vittoria's schemes. The Russos were in shambles, Frank fighting charges while Monica tried to hold their territory together. The Bernardis fractured completely, Carlo's betrayal destroying whatever trust had existed between the brothers. And through it all, Dante worked, consolidating power, securing territory, making deals with the families that survived. He brought Aurelia into every meeting, every negotiation, introduced her as his partner, not just his wife. Let her speak, let her contribute, let her be visible. It was exhausting and exhilarating in equal measure. Her family called every day, her mother worried, her father cautiously proud, Marco asking 1,000 questions about what it was like being in the mob. She tried to explain that she wasn't in the mob, that Dante was transitioning everything to legitimate businesses, but Marco wasn't interested in those details. He wanted stories about shootings and betrayals and dramatic confrontations. She didn't tell him about the nightmares, about waking up at 3 in the morning, seeing Vittoria's face, hearing the gunshot, about the weight of knowing she'd played a role in destroying multiple families. But she told Dante. One night, when the nightmares were particularly bad, she found him in his study and just sat there, not saying anything, until he looked up from his work. Can't sleep? He asked. Not really. He stood, came around the desk, and sat beside her on the leather couch. Not touching, just present. It gets easier, he said. The guilt, the second guessing. Eventually, you learn to live with it. Does it ever go away? No, but you get better at carrying it. They sat in silence for a while, the only sound the ticking of the clock on the wall. I'm staying, Aurelia said finally. Past the 12 months. Past the exit clause. I'm staying. Dante turned to look at her. Are you sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. She met his eyes. This life, it's not what I planned. Not what I wanted, but it's mine now. We built something together these last few weeks, something real, and I want to see where it goes. Even knowing what it costs? Especially knowing what it costs. She took a breath. I'm tired of being powerless, Dante. Tired of being invisible. You've given me a chance to be something more, to matter. I'm not walking away from that. He studied her face, searching for doubt. Finding none, he nodded slowly. Then we do this right, he said. No more pretending this is just business. We're partners, equals. You get a voice in every decision that affects us both. And the family business? Your family. So yes, you get a voice there too. He held out his hand. Partners? She took it. Partners. They shook on it, formal and serious, sealing an agreement that meant more than any wedding vows had. Somewhere in the city, Vittoria Castellano was dying in a hospital bed. Marco Morelli was boarding a plane to Singapore. The families were scrambling for power in the vacuum left behind. But in that quiet study, in that moment of decision, Aurelia Vale Morelli and her husband made a choice that would define everything that came after. They chose each other, not because they had to, but because they wanted to, and that made all the difference. The next morning brought unexpected visitors. Aurelia was in the kitchen with Mrs. Chen, learning how to make proper espresso, a skill she'd decided was essential if she was going to survive in this world, when Marco came in looking tense. "We've got a situation," he said to Dante, who was reading the newspaper at the breakfast table. "The Lombardis are here. All three brothers. They're asking for a meeting." Dante set down his paper, his expression carefully neutral. "Did they say what about?" "Territory negotiations. They want to talk before things get uglier." "Show them to my study. I'll be there in 5 minutes." Dante looked at Aurelia. "You should probably—" "I'm coming," she said, setting down her coffee cup. "Aurelia, the Lombardis aren't exactly friendly right now. Their cousin was arrested because of the evidence we presented. They might be looking for revenge. Then you'll need a witness, someone who can verify what's said." She met his eyes. "We're partners, remember? That means I don't sit on the sidelines when things get dangerous." Dante looked like he wanted to argue, but Marco cut in. "She's right. Having her there shows unity, shows we're not afraid of them." He shrugged. "Besides, if they try anything, they know they'll have to answer for attacking her too. That's leverage." "Fine," Dante said, "but stay close to me." The Lombardi brothers were waiting in the study, all three of them radiating barely contained hostility. Antonio, the eldest, stood by the window. Carlo sat in one of the chairs, his leg bouncing nervously. And Vincent, the youngest and most dangerous, leaned against the bookshelf with his arms crossed. "Dante," Antonio said, his voice cold. "And Mrs. Morelli. How domestic." "Antonio." Dante moved behind his desk, Aurelia taking the chair beside it rather than behind him. Equal positioning. "What can I do for you?" "You can explain why our cousin is sitting in a jail cell while you walk free." "Your cousin was working with Vittoria Castellano to skim money and manipulate families into conflicts. The evidence was clear." "Evidence you conveniently produced right when it benefited you most," Vincent said, his tone sharp. "Funny how that works." "If you're suggesting I fabricated anything, I'm suggesting you've been very lucky lately," Vincent interrupted. "Vittoria exposed, your enemies arrested, all the territory up for grabs. Seems like someone planned this perfectly." Aurelia spoke before Dante could. "Are you accusing us of orchestrating the entire thing?" Vincent's eyes shifted to her. "I'm saying it's suspicious. Your husband benefits from all of this. Conveniently, his new wife is right there beside him, playing the innocent victim while the bodies pile up." "Careful," Dante said, his voice dropping to something dangerous. "You're talking about my wife." "I'm talking about facts." Vincent pushed off the bookshelf. "You married her out of nowhere. She shows up at exactly the right moments. She's the one who confronted Vittoria at the meeting. And now you're sitting here consolidating power while the rest of us pick up the pieces. Forgive me if I find that suspicious." "Vittoria confessed," Aurelia said, keeping her voice level. "To everything. The murders, the manipulation, the money laundering. That wasn't orchestrated by us. That was her choice." "Was it? Or did you push her into a corner where confession was her only option?" "Does it matter?" Dante stood, his hands flat on the desk. "She killed my father. She killed my uncle. She destroyed families for her own profit. Whether we pushed her or not, she deserved everything she got. And our cousin deserved to go down with her?" Antonio finally spoke, his voice tight. "He made mistakes, yes, but he didn't kill anyone. He was just trying to survive in a system Vittoria built." "He knew what she was doing, and he enabled it," Dante said. "That makes him complicit." "By that logic, Half the families in this city should be arrested. Maybe they should be. The tension in the room ratcheted up another notch. Carlos stopped bouncing his leg, suddenly very still. Vincent's hand moved slightly toward his jacket, and Aurelia saw Marco shift his weight, ready to move. "Is that a threat?" Antonio asked. "It's a statement of fact." Dante's voice didn't waver. "The old system is broken. Vittoria proved that. We can either keep operating the same way, everyone skimming, everyone lying, everyone waiting for the next betrayal, or we can build something different, something sustainable." "You mean something you control," Vincent said. "I mean something legitimate. Real businesses, real profit, without the constant threat of arrest or assassination." Dante looked at each of them in turn. "My father wanted to transition the family operations into legal enterprises. Vittoria fought him because she was making too much from the dirty side. Now that she's gone, I'm finishing what he started. You can be part of that, or you can keep fighting over scraps of illegal territory until the police shut all of us down." "Pretty speech," Antonio said, "but words don't rebuild trust." "Then let's talk actions." Dante pulled out a folder from his desk drawer, slid it across to Antonio. "Vittoria had accounts your family didn't know about. Money she skimmed from your operations over the years. This is documentation of all of it, including access codes to recover the funds. Consider it a gesture of good faith." Antonio picked up the folder, flipped through it, his expression shifting from hostility to surprise. "This is millions," Dante finished. "Money that belongs to your family. I could have kept it, used it to expand my own operations. But I'm giving it back, because I don't want your territory or your money. I want an alliance." The brothers exchanged glances. Carlo leaned forward, looking at the documents. "Why?" he asked. "Why give this back?" "Because the wars need to end," Aurelia said. All three brothers turned to look at her. "Every family in this city has lost someone to Vittoria's schemes. If we keep fighting each other, we're just finishing the job she started. But if we work together, actually rebuild instead of just surviving, we might create something that lasts." "You've been married, what, a month?" Vincent said. "And you think you understand how this world works?" "I understand leverage and strategy," she shot back. "I understand that holding grudges is expensive and that revenge doesn't pay dividends. Vittoria's gone. Your cousin will serve his time. You can spend the next decade trying to get even, or you can take this money, rebuild your operations, and move forward." Vincent stared at her, something shifting in his expression. Not quite respect, but close. "She's got a spine," he said to Dante. "I'll give you that." "She's got more than that," Dante said. "She's got vision, and she's right. The wars end now, or we all lose." Antonio closed the folder, looked at his brothers. Some silent communication passed between them. "We'll need guarantees," he said finally. "Territory agreements, profit sharing on the legitimate businesses, and a seat at the table when decisions get made." "Done," Dante said immediately. "We'll draft a formal agreement, equal partnership, transparent operations, shared oversight." "And your wife?" Vincent asked, his tone less hostile now. "She part of this partnership too?" "Absolutely." Vincent's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "This should be interesting." They spent the next 2 hours hammering out details. Territory lines, profit percentages, oversight committees. It wasn't perfect. There were still arguments, still moments of tension, but by the time the Lombardi brothers left, they had the framework of an alliance. "That went better than expected," Marco said after they'd gone. "It went better than it should have," Dante corrected. "They came here looking for a fight and left with a partnership. That doesn't happen unless they were already looking for a way out." "Maybe they're just tired," Aurelia said. "Tired of fighting, tired of losing people, tired of watching everything fall apart. Sometimes people just want permission to stop." Dante looked at her, something warm in his expression. "When did you get so wise?" "When I started paying attention." Over the next 3 weeks, they met with every major family in the city. Some meetings went smoothly, like the Lombardis. Others were harder, shouting matches, threats. One memorable incident where someone actually pulled a gun before cooler heads prevailed. But slowly, painfully, they built a coalition. The Vale Morelli Alliance, the newspapers called it, combining Aurelia's maiden name with Dante's family name. She hadn't suggested it. Some reporter had coined the phrase. but Dante liked it enough that he started using it officially. A signal that this was something new, built by both of them. Her family struggled with the publicity. Her father gave exactly one interview, looking uncomfortable in a suit that didn't fit quite right, explaining that his daughter was a good woman trying to do good things in a difficult situation. Her mother refused all media requests, and Marco became something of a celebrity at school, which he enjoyed far too much. "You need to tell him to stop," her mother said during one of their weekly calls. "He's walking around like he's in a movie. Yesterday he told his teacher his sister runs the city now." "I don't run the city, Mom." "Tell that to the news. They've run 3 profiles on you this week alone." It was true. Aurelia had become a media fixation, the reluctant bride turned crime family strategist. Reporters camped outside the house, following her to charity events, analyzing her clothes and her words, and her every public appearance. It was invasive and exhausting, but Dante's security kept the worst of it at bay. "You could give an interview," he suggested one morning over breakfast. "Control the narrative instead of letting them write it for you." "And say what?" "I married into a crime family, but we're going legit now. Trust me." Something like that. He smiled. "You're good at talking to people, Aurelia. Better than me. They trust you in a way they'll never trust me." She thought about it. About the power of shaping your own story instead of letting others tell it for you. "I'll consider it," she said. 2 days later, Vittoria Castellano died. The news came through a police alert she'd coded during the night and couldn't be revived. No family, no funeral arrangements, just a woman who'd destroyed countless lives, dying alone in a hospital bed. Aurelia thought she'd feel something. Relief, maybe. Or satisfaction. Instead, she just felt tired. "Is it wrong that I feel sorry for her?" she asked Dante that night. They were in their bedroom. Separate rooms had become impractical as they spent more time working together late into the night, and at some point they'd just started sharing the space. Nothing intimate, just proximity born of convenience and growing comfort. "Not wrong," Dante said. "Just human." He was sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at his hands. "She loved my father. I believe that part was real. She just loved her own ambition more." "Do you think she had regrets?" "At the end? Probably. But regret doesn't undo what's done." He looked at her. "She made her choices. We're making ours. The difference is we're trying to build something instead of tear it down." A month after Vittoria's death, they held the first official meeting of what Dante was calling the Consolidated Family Council. Representatives from every major family, all sitting around a conference table in a downtown office building Dante had purchased specifically for this purpose. "We're not here to talk about territory or revenge," Dante said, standing at the head of the table. "We're here to talk about transition, moving our operations from illegal to legitimate. It won't be fast and it won't be easy, but it's the only way any of us survive the next decade." Frank Russo, recently released from custody after most charges were dropped, spoke first. "And who decides what's legitimate? You?" "A committee," Aurelia said, standing beside Dante. "Representatives from each family, equal voting rights, transparent decision-making. No one person controls everything." "And you expect us to trust that?" Frank's wife Monica asked. She'd been cold to Aurelia since the arrests, blaming her for Frank's public humiliation. "I expect you to verify it," Aurelia replied. "Full financial audits, regular meetings, oversight at every level. Trust isn't given, it's earned. We're willing to earn it." The meeting lasted 4 hours. There were arguments, accusations, moments where everything almost fell apart. But by the end, they had a framework, a plan for transitioning shipping operations, real estate holdings, and import businesses into fully legitimate enterprises over the next 5 years. 5 years is ambitious," Antonio Lombardi said as people filed out. 5 years is necessary," Dante replied. "The police are watching all of us now. We either clean up fast or we all go down." "You really think this will work?" "I think it has to." That night, Aurelia stood in the bathroom, staring at herself in the mirror. She looked different than she had 4 months ago. Harder, maybe. More aware. The woman looking back at her had stood in rooms full of dangerous men and held her own. Had helped negotiate peace between families that had been at war for decades. Had chosen to stay in a marriage that terrified her because the alternative, walking away, felt like giving up. "You okay?" Dante appeared in the doorway. just thinking about how much has changed. Regretting it? No. She turned to look at him. Scared of it, maybe, but not regretting it. He moved into the bathroom, stood beside her, both of them reflected in the mirror. We're doing something good here, he said quietly. It's messy and complicated, and probably half the families will try to cheat the system, but we're trying. That counts for something. Does it? It has to. He met her eyes in the mirror. Otherwise, what's the point of any of this? She didn't have an answer for that. The real test came 2 months later when the first business officially transitioned. One of the Morelli shipping companies, fully audited, fully licensed, operating completely above board. It was smaller than the others, less profitable in the short term, but it was clean. They held a small celebration at the office, just the core team and representatives from the council. Champagne, speeches about new beginnings, the usual corporate nonsense. But underneath the formality, there was real pride. They'd actually done it. 1 down, 47 to go, Marco joked, raising his glass. 47? Aurelia asked. That's how many businesses we identified for transition. Some will take longer than others, but the plan is to have everything clean within 5 years. Ambitious. That's what Antonio said. Aurelia found herself standing next to Monica Russo near the windows, both of them looking out at the city. I owe you an apology, Monica said quietly. For what? For blaming you. For what happened to Frank, for the arrests, all of it. Monica sipped her champagne. I was angry and scared, and you were an easy target. But you didn't cause any of this. Vittoria did. And you helped stop her. We all helped stop her, Aurelia said. Maybe. But you didn't have to. You could have stayed out of it, kept yourself safe. Instead, you chose to be involved. Monica looked at her. That took courage. Or stupidity. I'm still not sure which. Monica laughed. A real one this time. Maybe both. But it worked out. They stood in companionable silence, watching the city lights flicker in the growing darkness. Can I ask you something? Aurelia said. How do you do it? Stay married to someone in this business? The danger, the secrets, the constant threat of everything falling apart? Monica was quiet for a moment. You find your line, the thing you won't compromise on. For me, it's my kids. Everything I do, every choice I make, is about making sure they're safe, and they have options I never had. As long as Frank understands that, respects that, we make it work. And if he didn't, then I'd walk away. Love only works if both people are choosing it. The moment it becomes an obligation instead of a choice, it's already over. The words stayed with Aurelia long after the party ended. That night, she and Dante sat in their study. It had become their study somewhere along the way, both their desks in the same room, both of them working side by side most evenings. Marco called, Dante said, looking up from his laptop. Your brother, not mine. What did he want? To tell me I'm the coolest brother-in-law ever, and to ask if you could get him tickets to some concert. Dante smiled. I told him to ask you himself. He's impossible. He's 15. It's required. Dante closed his laptop. Your family's doing well, by the way. Your father's been meeting with our financial advisors, setting up trust funds for Marco's college, securing your mother's retirement. They're going to be comfortable for the rest of their lives. Because of the debt settlement. Because you married me to save them. And I'm making sure that sacrifice actually means something. He looked at her seriously. They're family now. That means they're protected. The simple statement hit harder than it should have. Family, protected, two concepts that had seemed so foreign 4 months ago. Thank you, she said quietly. Don't thank me. You earned it. 6 months into the marriage, they had their first real fight. It started over something small, Dante making a decision about one of the family businesses without consulting her. He'd sold off a property, used the funds to buy into a legitimate real estate development, all perfectly reasonable. But he hadn't told her until after the deal was done. I thought we were partners, Aurelia said, trying to keep her voice level. We are. Then why didn't you tell me about this before you did it? Because it was time sensitive and you were visiting your parents. I made a judgment call. A judgment call that involved millions of dollars and one of our major assets. It was the right move, Aurelia. The property was losing money, and the development opportunity was too good to pass up. I'm not arguing about whether it was right. I'm arguing about the fact that you didn't include me in the decision. Dante's expression hardened. I've been running this business for years. I don't need permission to make strategic decisions. I'm not asking for permission. I'm asking for respect. For you to actually treat me like a partner instead of an employee you occasionally consult. That's not fair, isn't it? She stood, frustration boiling over. You say we're equals, but every time something important happens, you make the call alone. Every time there's a risk, you try to protect me instead of trusting me to handle it. I'm not some delicate flower, Dante. I've proven that. But you still treat me like I might break. Because you might. His voice rose to match hers. You've been in this world for 6 months, Aurelia. 6 months. I've been in it my entire life. Forgive me for wanting to shield you from the worst of it. I don't want to be shielded. I want to be trusted. They stared at each other, the air between them crackling with tension. I do trust you, Dante said finally, his voice quieter. Then prove it. Stop making unilateral decisions. Stop trying to protect me from every hard choice. Let me be your actual partner, not just in name. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. You're right. I'm sorry. The apology surprised her. Dante didn't apologize easily. I'm still learning how to do this, he continued. How to share control instead of holding it all myself. My father ran everything alone. That's the model I grew up with. But you're right. We agreed to be partners. I need to actually act like it. Aurelia felt her anger deflate. I'm still learning too. How to speak up when something bothers me instead of just accepting it. We're both figuring this out. Then we figure it out together, Dante said. Actually together. No more unilateral decisions. No more protection that looks like exclusion. Deal. They didn't hug or make up dramatically. They just went back to work. But something had shifted. A boundary established, a line drawn. Partnership wasn't just a word anymore. It was a practice they both had to commit to. The media attention reached its peak 8 months into their marriage when Aurelia agreed to do an interview with a major news magazine. She sat in their living room across from a reporter who asked all the expected questions: how they'd met, what it was like being married into a crime family, whether she was scared. I was terrified, she said honestly. But fear doesn't mean you don't act. It means you act despite being afraid. And what we're building here, the transitions, the legitimate businesses, the alliances between families, that's worth being afraid for. Some people say you're just putting a pretty face on organized crime, the reporter said, that these families will never really change. Some people are probably right. Change is hard and some people won't make it. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't try. My husband lost his father to this system. Other families have lost sons, brothers, daughters. If we can create something where the next generation doesn't have to live with that threat, isn't that worth the effort? The interview ran with the headline, The Accidental Revolutionary, How Aurelia Morelli is Reshaping Organized Crime. It went viral, sparked debates, generated thousands of comments and think pieces. You're officially more famous than me now, Dante said, reading one of the articles on his phone. Is that a problem? No, it's useful. He looked at her. People trust you. They see you as genuine, as someone who actually cares about making things better. That's currency we can use. I'm not a PR tool. I know, but you are effective at communicating in ways I'm not. That's not diminishing you. It's recognizing your strengths. She thought about arguing, but he was right. She was good at talking to people, at making them believe in possibilities instead of dwelling on past failures. It was a skill, and skills were meant to be used. 10 months in, they took their first vacation. Nothing extravagant, just a week at a beach house upstate, away from the city and the business and the constant pressure. Dante had resisted the idea initially, claiming there was too much work, but Aurelia had insisted, and eventually he'd agreed. They spent the days walking on the beach, reading books neither of them had time for normally, cooking meals together in the tiny kitchen. It was strange, this normalcy. Like playing house, except it didn't feel like playing. It felt real. I could get used to this, Dante said one evening. They were sitting on the deck, watching the sun set over the water. To what? Peace, quiet, Not having to worry about who's trying to kill us this week. Aurelia laughed. The bar for a good life has gotten really low. Hasn't it? He turned to look at her. But seriously, us, away from everything, it's nice. It is. They sat in comfortable silence, the waves providing background noise. I need to tell you something, Dante said eventually. Her stomach tightened. Okay. I knew. About the exit clause. He was still staring out at the water. From the beginning, I knew you'd found it. I could have had my lawyers close that loophole before the wedding, made it impossible for you to leave. But I didn't. Why not? Because I wanted you to choose to stay. If you were trapped, really trapped, with no way out, you'd always resent me. But if you had an escape route and chose not to use it, that would mean something. That's manipulative. I know. He looked at her. But it's also true. I didn't want a wife who had no choice. I wanted a partner who chose to be here. Are you angry? She thought about it. She should be angry. He'd withheld information, made unilateral decisions about her future, all without telling her. But underneath the manipulation, there was something else. Respect, maybe. Or at least the desire for genuine connection instead of forced obligation. I'm not angry, she said finally. But you need to stop making decisions about us without talking to me first. That's twice now, the business deal, and this. 3 strikes, and we're going to have a real problem. Noted. He reached over, took her hand. For what it's worth, I'm glad you stayed. Not because it benefits me, though it does, but because I like who we are together. We make each other better. Do we? I think so. You make me think beyond survival, beyond just winning. You make me consider what kind of legacy we're actually building, and He paused. I hope I make you feel stronger, more capable, like you can handle anything. You do, she admitted. Even when you're being an overprotective idiot, you make me believe I can do things I never thought possible. He smiled, squeezed her hand. They sat there until the sun disappeared completely and the stars came out, bright and clear away from the city lights. 11 months into their marriage, the final piece of Vittoria's empire fell. A shipping company she'd used for smuggling now fully transitioned into legitimate freight operations. The ceremony was bigger this time, all the families present, the mayor giving a speech about public-private partnerships and community rebuilding. Aurelia stood beside Dante on the stage, smiling for cameras, shaking hands with politicians who 6 months ago had wanted them all arrested. It was surreal, this respectability, this acceptance. We did it, Dante murmured as they walked off stage. We're not done yet. 30 more businesses to go. Ever the optimist. Someone has to be. That night they had dinner with her family. Her parents, Marco, all of them crowded around the dining room table at the house that had become home. Mrs. Chen had outdone herself. Roasted chicken, fresh bread, vegetables from the garden she'd started cultivating. This is amazing, Aurelia's mother said, looking around the table. All of us together like this. I wasn't sure we'd ever have this again. Why wouldn't we? Marco asked. Because a year ago we were drowning in debt and barely speaking to each other. And now look at us. Her father raised his glass. To Aurelia, for saving this family. Twice. I didn't. You did, he interrupted gently. You married into a dangerous situation to save us from debt, and then you chose to stay and build something good out of it. That takes courage most people don't have. They all drank to that, even Marco, who'd been allowed half a glass of wine for the occasion. After dinner, Aurelia found her brother on the back patio looking up at the stars. You okay? She asked. Yeah, just thinking. About what? About what I want to do. With my life, I mean. He glanced at her. I'm going to be applying to colleges next year. Everyone keeps asking what I want to study, and I don't know. You've got time to figure it out. Do I? He turned to face her. You didn't. You had to make all these huge decisions really fast. Marrying Dante, getting involved in the business, all of it. And you made it work. I'm still figuring it out, she admitted. Every day I wake up and wonder if I made the right choices. But you don't regret it? No, it's hard and scary, and sometimes I want to run away, but I don't regret it. Marco nodded slowly. I think I want to do something like what you're doing. Not the crime family part, he added quickly, but the building something better part, taking broken systems and fixing them. That's ambitious. I learned from the best. He smiled. Seriously, though, watching you this year, seeing how you've changed things, it's made me think maybe I can do something important too. Not just survive, but actually make things better. Aurelia pulled him into a hug. You can. You absolutely can. They stood there for a moment, siblings who'd grown up struggling and were finally learning what it felt like to hope. The anniversary of their wedding arrived quietly. No big celebration planned, no parties or press events. Just the two of them, marking a year that had transformed both their lives. They went back to the cathedral where they'd been married. It was empty this time, no guests or flowers or photographers, just stone and stained glass and silence. A year ago, I stood here and had no idea what I was getting into, Aurelia said. Neither did I, Dante admitted. I thought this would be a business arrangement that I'd tolerate for a few years before finding a way out. And now I can't imagine doing any of this without you. He took her hands. I know we didn't start this the traditional way. And I know there's still the exit clause, still the option for you to walk away. But I'm asking you, not as a business partner, not as a strategic ally, but as your husband, will you stay? Actually stay, not just until it's convenient or profitable, but for real? Aurelia looked at him, this man who'd been a stranger, then a warden, then a partner, and now something more complicated and real. I'm staying, she said. Not because I'm trapped or because it's strategic. I'm staying because I choose you. Because we built something together that matters. Because when I think about my future, I can't picture it without you in it. Dante pulled her close, and for the first time since they'd met, he kissed her like he meant it. Not the perfunctory peck from their wedding, not the careful distance they'd maintained for months. A real kiss, full of promise and possibility, and the weight of a year's worth of choices that had led them here. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were crying. I love you, Dante said. I don't know when it happened or how, but I do. I love you too, Aurelia replied. Despite everything, or maybe because of everything. I love you. They stood there in the empty cathedral, two people who'd been forced together by circumstance and had chosen to make something real out of it. 3 years later, they stood in front of a crowd of reporters and city officials, cutting the ribbon on the Valle Morelli Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to helping families trapped in debt, offering financial literacy programs, job training, and support services. My wife and I started from a place of necessity, Dante said into the microphone. Her family needed help. Mine needed legitimacy. But what we built from that necessity became something more, a partnership, a family, and now, an opportunity to help others who are where we once were. Aurelia stepped up to speak, her hand finding Dante's. 3 years ago, I married a stranger to save my family from drowning in debt. Today, I stand here with my husband, my partner, my best friend, opening an organization that will help thousands of families avoid that same desperation. We can't change the past, but we can build a better future. That's what this foundation represents. That's what the last 3 years have taught us. Change is possible. Redemption is real. And sometimes the things that start as survival become the foundations of something beautiful. The crowd applauded, cameras flashed. Her family stood in the front row, her father beaming with pride, her mother crying happy tears. Marco, now a college freshman studying public policy, recording everything on his phone. That night, Aurelia and Dante sat in their study, reviewing applications for the foundation's first round of grants. This one, Aurelia said, pointing to a file. Single mother, 3 kids, medical debt from her youngest daughter's surgery. She's working 2 jobs but can't get ahead. Approved, Dante said, marking it. What else? They went through dozens more, each one a story, a family, a chance to make things better. We're going to run out of money, Dante said eventually, looking at the stack of approved applications. Then we fundraise more, ask the families to contribute, make this an actual community effort instead of just us. They'll say yes. Everyone wants to be part of something good. See? You're learning to be optimistic. Don't push it. But he was smiling. Around midnight, they finally stopped working. Aurelia stood, stretched, looked around the study that had witnessed so many late nights, so many arguments and breakthroughs and quiet moments of understanding. "Remember when you told me this marriage was just window dressing?" she asked. "I was wrong about a lot of things back then." "We both were." She moved to stand beside his chair. "But we figured it out." "We did." He pulled her down onto his lap. "And we're still figuring it out, every day. That's the deal, isn't it? You don't just arrive at perfect. You work toward it, constantly." "Sounds exhausting." "It is." She kissed him. "But worth it." 5 years after their wedding, the last illegal operation transitioned to legitimate business. The newspapers ran it as a major story. The family that went straight. Interviews, features, profiles of the various families who'd been part of the transformation. The Val Morelli Foundation had helped over 10,000 families escape debt. 3 of the former crime families had started legitimate businesses that employed hundreds of people. Marco Morelli, Dante's cousin, not Aurelia's brother, had returned from Singapore and was working as a consultant, helping other organizations transition from illegal to legitimate operations. It wasn't perfect. Some families had refused to change and had either been arrested or destroyed by their own corruption. There were still threats, still dangers, still people who saw the alliance as weakness to exploit. But the foundation held. The partnerships endured. The dream of something better survived. Aurelia stood in the nursery they'd spent the last 3 months preparing, her hand on her swollen belly. 6 months pregnant with their first child. A daughter, they'd found out last week. "What are you thinking about?" Dante asked from the doorway. "About how different life is now. 5 years ago, I was a waitress living in a studio apartment, drowning in student loans. Now I'm here, married to you, about to have a baby, running a foundation. It's like someone else's life." "Is it a life you want?" "It's the only life I want." She turned to look at him. "We built this, Dante. From nothing, from less than nothing, from debt and forced marriages and survival, we built something real, something good." He moved to stand beside her, his hand joining hers on her belly. "She's going to grow up in a different world than we did," he said. "Safer, more legitimate, with choices we never had. That's the whole point, isn't it? Making things better for the next generation." "It is." They stood there in the quiet nursery, 2 people who'd been strangers forced together by circumstance, now bound by choice and love, and the life they were creating together. Outside, the city sprawled in all directions. Territories that used to be fought over with bullets were now managed with contracts. Families that used to wage war now attended the same charity galas and business conferences. It wasn't perfect. It would never be perfect. But it was better, and better was enough. "I love you," Aurelia said. "I love you too," Dante replied. "Thank you for staying, for choosing this, for choosing us. Thank you for giving me something worth choosing." They kissed, gentle and familiar, the kind of kiss that came from years of building trust and partnership. The baby kicked, strong and insistent, reminding them that the future was already arriving. And for the first time since that day in the cathedral when she'd said, "I do," without meaning it, Aurelia felt completely, genuinely at peace. She'd married a stranger to save her family. She'd stayed to save herself. And in the process, she'd found something she never expected. A real marriage, a real partnership, a real future worth fighting for. It wasn't the life she'd planned, but it was the life she'd chosen. And that made all the difference.